but it's appertaining to the grant pot mainly, so I wanted to include that. So that will be the first change. The second change is the review of the street food item 13, and that will come directly after the grant applications. So the review of the street food trading after 1 year will come directly after the grant applications. So inserted is item 9, and then we'll move into the substantive budget discussion after that. So welcome everybody. Just to get through the bits and pieces that we need to. Do we have any apologies, absences or substitutions?
We have no apologies for absence. All members are present.
The recommendation is that members approve the apology. So can I have a proposal, please?
There are no apologies.
All right. Okay, excellent. Any declarations of interest?
We've had none notified, no dispensations have been sought, but I am aware that Councillor Nickinson may wish to speak.
Thank you. There's a grant application from an organisation called Chesil Sailability. I have no involvement in the organisation or any involvement in the grant application, but I understand that a relative of mine volunteers for the organisation, so I'm certain to select perhaps I should.
Duly noted, thank you. Anybody else? No. Okay. Item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting. I'll take anybody's, unless anybody's got anything to say that that's a true and accurate record of the meeting, the last meeting we had. Thank you very much. Item 5 is council questions and statements.
We've had none pre-notified, Chairman.
We've received this fine. And item 6 is any public questions. So we have a couple of members of the public here. Any questions?
We've had none.
Excellent. So just for clarity, it's my ambition to get through this by 9 o'clock. So Councillor Legg, so we want you to understand.
I won't be here. I'll be in bed.
Okay, so we're going to start firstly on the grant applications, item 8, and I'll ask. Sorry. Yes, my apologies. We have item 7, which is an amendment to the grant policy, and I'm going to ask the town clerk to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. So there are 2 amendments detailed in the agenda for councillors to consider. The first is just to bring some clarity on the legal provisions covering the use of funds at parish and town council levels. We are unable to fund schools for delivery of the curriculum and churches for funding for the fabric of church buildings. These are 2 things in statute, but they are missing from our policy. And what we want to do is ensure that we give potential applicants all the information we can upfront to avoid them going to the length of filling in a form when we're unable to fund them. And the second part is members may recall that in a couple of meetings, you've mentioned a desire to look at ongoing support for projects that deliver high levels of social benefit and have a high impact within the Weymouth area. Currently, according to the grant policy, we can only fund organisations on a yearly basis, and it needs to be for something different year on year. I recall that there have been a couple of applications where a member of voiced that they would like to have a way of committing to longer term funding to give organisations some security of service delivery. So there is a slight amendment there that details service level agreements. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, just on the item paragraph 3, can I just confirm by schools we also mean colleges, academies? Can we have that clarified just within there?
Yeah, happy. Anything that's funded by Dorset Council for an education purpose.
And secondly, churches.
They're not funded anymore. Academies get it straight from the government.
That is something I will have to take guidance on.
Okay, and second of all, then churches, can I also get clarity, does that also consider other buildings that are used for worship and faith? So I'm thinking mosques and the likes of that, because I wouldn't want to single out one faith over another.
Currently, the legislation, which dates back to the 1890s, currently only details churches. But what I will do is seek clarity and bring that back to the next committee along with the information on colleges and academies.
Okay, but I'm not actually happy then to include the churches in that, because although that may be guidance, unless that legislation has changed, I think it's very discriminatory against other faiths and religions. That we can help, Christianity mainly, because we could help other places of worship, but not those who worship Christ.
I'm happy to check on that and report back, and members can defer that decision to a later date if you wish.
The decision on the policy itself.
If that's what's being asked for.
How do members feel?
Let's defer and get that application.
Okay, so this grant policy amendment is going to be deferred to the next meeting, so we seek clarity for inclusion, or so there is no discrimination on faith and or schools. Academies are directly funded by central government, but should be included, I think, in policy. Otherwise, you're discriminating on those grounds as well. We'll check that and come back and bring it back into the next meeting.
The second part, which is the service level agreement.
Yes, so
Any more can
does that mean that we can vote on that particular piece? So on this item, we can just no, the other way. Yes. So the recommendation is the council approves the policy amendment in the report for immediate adoption. So we're only including one of those amendments.
Sorry, we are still talking to item 9. Can I just speak in favour of support of that? I know
Item 7.
Sorry, it's item 7, currently paragraph 9. I think I support that amendment because I know that one of the applicants here, I think it's probably the 3rd year that they've applied for a similar scheme of work, which we've supported for the previous 2 years. I'm sure when we debate it, the outcome will probably go the same again. It will save that organisation a lot of time each year of being out for this committee time also.
So members clear that we are voting only on paragraph 9 of the grants budget, and it's on the screen at them.
I'm happy to propose the amendment to paragraph 9, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Proposer, do I have a seconder? Councillor Huckle, a second. Any final comments before I go to the vote? All those in favour of that amendment?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous, thank you very much. So in that vein and seamlessly to the next item, which is the grant applications itself. Grant A, the Lantern Trust. Okay. No, we'll take the Lantern Trust first. There's nobody from the Lantern here this evening, but I'll take questions from members on the application itself. Over to you. Councillor Weller.
It's not a question. Can we go to a vote on it?
We can. Councillor Home.
Second that vote. This is one of the applicants I referred to previously.
Okay, I'll just check with other members that I'm allowing everybody to have this say. Anybody would like to speak to this item on the lantern? Everybody's aware of what the lantern does. Yeah. Councillor Weller, it gives options in the paper around 3 or 5 years. Are you suggesting either one?
I will be guided by others on this, really, but I'd like a period of 5 years, I think.
My advice would be, given the changing nature of the financial state of the country, 3 years is probably a safe option, but I'll take advice. Councillor Nicholson.
Just one sort of minor point is, are we in a position to decide this over the, what would be the life of the next council? That's my only concern. How does that work?
Yes, we can. We might not want to, but we can do that, as we do with other financial commitments and
But
contracts.
obviously, we're advised that a subsequent council could overturn that. And that
They
needs to
could,
be
yes.
understood, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's not binding.
It's not binding, but I think we would. But I think the end user, i.e. the landowner, just look at some surety around what they can spend the money on. Okay, Councillor Watley.
Can we? It's over 5,000 per annum over 3 to 5 years.
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we ask the lantern to keep us informed on what we're doing? Because they have a very large basis to work with. But you know, what's the 5,000 going to do for them if we didn't give it to them? What we might need to do?
The details are in the paper, but
Yeah.
just to reassure you, Councillor Watley, that the part of gifting the grant, and they have to fill out a report after 6 months, which they have previously done. So we have those
Yeah, right.
and produce our report for us around there. And I think we'll probably tidy up the commissioning reporting anyway when we get more into this. But of course, you can always invite yourself down there. Always happy to see you if you want to go along and talk to Mike down there. Councillor Harris.
I'd just like to propose that we agree the recommendation at 5,000 per annum, not over a period of 3 to 5 years, but for a period of 3 years. This helps pick up Richard's point, because we would only be committing the next council to 1 further year, because we would have committed 2 years.
Correct. Yes, so I had that original proposal from Councillor Weller, seconded by Councillor Hope. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
All those against? Any abstentions?
1.
Moving on, B is the second application is for Dorset Council. Yes. Do we have Jackie here or anybody to be from Dorset Council?
Can I give Jackie's apologies? She gave me a ring to say she wouldn't be able to make it tonight, very unfortunately. Another meeting cropped up, and I'm prepared to make some points as and when necessary.
Okay, so open up to members and I'll ask Councillor Harris to summarise. Councillor Northern.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. Not normally a member of this committee. I went along to the taste of the session. It was a very good session. I was very supportive of what that group of people are doing, and I do approve of it going forward. My question refers back to item 7, because in item 7, it says organisations whose function is primarily undertaken by the Health Authority or Dorset Council's social services and not normally able to receive funds. And I wondered how Dorset Council, this team, whether they fall under social services. They're certainly a Dorset Council team and they're providing services. I just wonder whether we need to address that regulation and clarify that regulation. Well, I support the spending because I think it's a good way of demonstrating co-working. I'd just like to check the legality of all the regulations.
I'm happy to advise that the work that this project covers doesn't form a core legal part of the delivery of either social service functions or public health.
I've got one more question, which is trying to be consistent. How did it was estimated that 75% of the participants are likely to come from how did they come to that figure?
Well, they didn't. It was the officers that came to the decision to recommend the 2,250. I was going to ask the same question.
That's not the question he's done.
Yeah, that was based on the figure that Dorset Council gave, that 75%
Would be
participants will be from Weymouth. And
Yeah.
I think what Councillor Gray is asking is how was that figure arrived at?
Because we've asked other organisations to be a bit more. I mean, I'm thinking back to the sailing club where we really
Rowing club.
growing club, where we really asked them to prove. So I'm just trying to be consistent here, as this committee needs to say.
At the moment, they're only operative in West Moors.
Yes.
And so they haven't got any outposts that like doing this sort of work in this part of the world. So I'm pretty confident that there would be at least 75% and that they're putting that figure in to be, you know, within the bounds of the request. Because if you take our population, the other people who might take advantage of us having that facility in Weymouth, there aren't many people living within access of Weymouth that could come to it on a regular basis.
Okay, so I'm going to make a specific request that we ask them to fill in their 6 month return.
Thank
We'll get actual figures of how many people from Weymouth participated or took advantage.
And that's not a Weymouth postcode, that's a Weymouth boundary, town boundary.
It's far from right, isn't
There were people who.
No, I mean, Chickerell won't count, although postcode is Weymouth.
it? Yes. Okay.
Oh, right, so we could actually take over the whole. Boundary needs moving, Jane, it needs moving to the other side of Chickerell.
Let's not go there, let's not go there.
Help support our argument.
Come to you, councillor.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to point out to members that there is an error in the recommendation at the very end of the report. It, A is correct, B states £2,500 to Dorset Council, the actual recommendation is 2,250, and similarly Chesil Sailability, it's listed as 800, whereas in the report you'll see the actual figure is 400. My apologies that the B and C figures in the recommendation were incorrect. Just to say that the 2,250 is correct.
It's correct in the report, that's what you're voting. Councillor Watley.
Again, it's Dorset Council asking us to fund half of it or bit of their project. I'm sorry, I can't support it because I'm adamant that Dorset Council robbed us initially and they should be paying for this in full.
Councillor Lincoln.
I have to say I have some sympathy with Councillor Wattley's view on this. I mean, I think if they want to start this, I think they should be required to fund it, because the danger of this is that it's going to set a precedent. And the Dorset Council feel they haven't got money to fund what is a very good service. They're going to ask other people to do that, and I'm not sure that's down to us to do that. I think Dorset Council should have sufficient funding to do this. I think it's a very good cause, but I'm not sure we should be funding it.
Yeah, this committee has taken that view before on services that sort of fall on the border of whether there's statutory health issues. But I'm going to ask Councillor Harris to
Thank you.
bring us home on this.
I think that the point that Jane made is very apt, and David Northern mentioned it when he spoke at the beginning. This work is not essential in the sense that it is not a vital part of the service. It is something that really benefits some of our most disadvantaged people in this part of the world. At the moment, if they wanted this sort of activity, they would have to go over to West Moors. It's a combination of Dorset Council, the health service. Why shouldn't we be part of that? It is something that is for the benefit of our people, and seeing the enjoyment of somebody who has never actually been able to move through the air outside on one of these trikes, just as they went around the park and ride site, was fantastic. They'd never been that fast in the open air in their lives. And it was a difficulty to get them off those bikes at the end of the session. So, if we value supporting all of our community, then I think this is a very good opportunity to do so.
So can I just come back on that? This has been supported in West Moors 100% by Dorset Council.
No, by Weymouth and by the Bournemouth health authority that side of the council. That's given. Well, they haven't got all the money; they have to raise some themselves.
No, but the point is I'm making, David, is that West Moors sits within
Dorset, yeah.
But obviously some other parish council, and are they being asked to support this? I mean, what I'm saying is that Dorset Council are supporting that side of it 100%.
Yeah, they're not asking for us to support it in the sense of the operating costs. They need a resource. They need a building to keep their vehicles in order to make this happen. Once it's happened, we won't be charged for anything because the workforce that helped to do this will be there and paid for by the other organisations. It's to get the capital expenditure of the
So for clarity, Councillor Nicholson, the West Moors one is already up and running. And the, whatever was done at the time of setting it up, I would have to check, but this is a capital, one-off capital expense that they're asking for us to partner in. I think the overall budget was 20,000 something, and they're being asked for 2,000. So it's an injection from a partnership point of view to get it off the ground. There is no commitment to fund this on an ongoing revenue basis, which is what it should be in terms of grant application. Councillor Hope.
Thank you very much, Chair. I support the application and I think Councillor Harris has spoken very passionate about the experience it can give our residents. The only thing I note is that obviously say it's a capital expense. So the only thing I'd like typed in the condition that should the project ever cease to exist, then the percentage of the money is returned back to Weymouth Town Council with the sale of the asset, or is offered to a local based charity within Weymouth and Portland.
We can include that.
Yeah, good point.
We can always use a container
Yes.
somewhere. Okay, so if there are no more comments, I'm going to ask for proposer.
I'll propose the motion.
Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Weller. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
All those against? Any
None.
abstentions?
1.
Thank you, members. The third one is Chesil Sailability. Sailability. It's hard to say it. 7:30. And I think we have.
A representative for this.
Good evening, sir. Members, you should have read the paper. I'll ask our representative to ask any questions. Anybody got any questions initially about this application? Is it supported by any particular councillors? Councillor Hope.
Can I just also make a non-pecuniary declaration, Chair? Weymouth Portland Lions, I believe, have recently given money to Chesil Sailability, which I'm a member of.
Okay, duly noted. Anything, members? Councillor Weller.
I've been aware of Chesil Sailability from the outset. I think it's an absolutely terrific charity. It provides huge benefits to young and not so young across Weymouth and Portland, and I would like to propose that we support this.
I've got one. Councillor Dickinson.
I just on the question of the recommendation, project cost is £800. Is the recommendation based on the fact of the number of people who are? I mean, it seems a bit picky to me, and you can't use half a laptop. I just wonder whether we're being, in this instance, a bit oversensitive because it's a thing that you're going to use for.
Yeah, if I can combine that with my point, which is it's based in Portland. And I wanted to ask the gentleman whether Portland Town Council had offered any money, given it's based in Portland. I know it's called Weymouth and Portland Sailability, but could you answer that? Because we've had this issue before with us only being the only contributor.
Yes, Councillor, I fully understand that. We haven't approached Portland Town Council. Looking through our membership, about 50% of our members come from Weymouth. I think 15% come from the Dorchester area, about 8 to 10% come from Portland, and all the rest come from all over Dorset, ranging from Bridport to Yeovil to Wareham to Broadstone. So, in fact, I wish we actually had more people involved from Portland because we're based there. That's not how it's worked out. So really, the proportion of people that come from Portland is very low compared to the overall number of members we've got.
Thank you. So just going back to Councillor Nickinson's point then, was I think you were making a point that because we applied the 50% rule, it was down to £400. You wanted to amend that to pay for?
Well, I don't know what other members feel, but I think it seems to me that to try to split the cost of a laptop over a proportion of people.
We have done this before, and I'm happy to take an amendment if you want to do that. Does anybody else want to speak in support of that? Councillor Hope.
I was going to pick up on that same point, bearing in mind, I know the proportionality is split between Weymouth and the rest of the Dorset, the gentleman said there. But when I think the benefit that it gives to Weymouth residents, I would be willing to make the recommendation that we fund the full cost of the item up to £800. I think when we look at larger cost services, it's, you know, we can apply this rule more stringent. But the fact that we're looking at an asset that they've approached us to fund, I think is slightly different than trying to get all organisations to pay £800.
Any other members want to speak in support of,
I'll second councillor Hope's
anybody
suggestion.
else? So, I think originally it was proposed by councillor, were you originally proposing it? Originally, I'll go back to councillor Nixon because he originally proposed that we change the amount that we are allocating from £400 being the 50% rule to the full £800. That was supported secondly by councillor Hope and then councillor Dickinson. Are we happy with that? Clear, yes. So all those in favour of the full £800 funding?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's unanimous.
Congratulations, it's Christmas. Would you like to, now that you're here, you've made the effort to come, is there anything else you'd like to say about Sailability? We are being streamed, so if you want to make a plea for additional members or support, or happy to do so.
Very happy just to give a couple of lines on what we do.
Yes, would be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're there to provide accessible savings for people with disabilities across the whole of Dorset. We provide opportunities for people with physical difficulties, learning difficulties, long-term health conditions. We've got one sailor who is completely non-verbal, completely recovered, cannot move, right the way through to a couple of young people who are wheelchair users who just won the nationals in their class. So we have a very wide range of sailors. People come for lots of different reasons. They come to sail just for the experience of being out on the water and the freedom of the water, something they talk about quite passionately. A number of people come and learn to sail because it's a very interesting and complex activity, and some people come to race as well. We're very positive about supporting progression where people want to progress. And we're actually very passionate about giving local people with disabilities access to really what are world-class sailing waters in our area. And we get a lot of positive feedback from the sailors. We've also got a way of quantifying that feedback, which I think is on page 8 of your appendix.
Yes.
Well, we've actually been able to quantify that, and that's a very powerful message about the impact that this has for people with a very wide range of disabilities.
Well, thank you for coming. It's great work you're doing.
Thank you very much, Shelley.
There's no need for you to stay for the rest of the riveting meeting that we're going to have, but so you're happy to go where you like, or you can stay.
I need to go. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on, members, this is one of the changes to the agenda. So I'm going to ask Councillor Hamilton to introduce her PID, which falls within the grant policy arena, and we can debate that. Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much, Chair. You've got the PID in front of you. The aim is to improve the well-being of children living in Weymouth. We all have heard stories in the news about children going hungry. Steps came to this committee in September. They have young people attend there going hungry. That's one source for this suggestion. The second source is that I think we've had a sense in the past of this committee that not all community groups are coming forward like we'd like to see. So there's a question about how we reach out to people with the community grant money we have. And finally, the source of inspiration was at our budget working group, when councillors of all parties really reluctant to be looking at the precept at a critical time, cost of living. We've been looking at, should we put the precept up, which is not a huge part of the council tax total. So we, as a town council, we have to look at that. And if we're going to use that cost of living reason as a reason to be hesitant about that, then I'm going to think of it in another way. We can't adjust how the precept is geared, that formula is set in stone. But what we can do is use some of our funds, which I believe sit nicely in reserves at the moment, to target those most in need. I hope that the thought of any child going hungry in our town is enough for us to be thinking about this. I'm going to recommend this because it's targeted, goes to those receiving benefits, low income. It's efficient. We make a money transfer to the schools. The schools are already set up to give grocery vouchers. And also, thirdly, it goes to local people. It goes to people in our town. And it goes straight into their pockets. They don't have to leave work. They don't have to travel. It goes straight to them. The scheme is inspired by Portland, who have been running something similar since 2020, aiming for long-term consistent support. The big question for us, Portland is one size. How many more people are there in Weymouth that we need to think about helping? Portland have extended this year their scheme to Portland children who attend schools in Weymouth. A couple of schools have come back. So in some of our Weymouth schools, we have children who benefit from the Portland scheme. And I'd like to think we could match that generosity. I read somewhere that the value of money should not be measured just in pounds and pence, but by how it benefits our community. So any questions or thoughts? Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton, just wonder which option does, just for my clarity, which option do they support currently in terms of the 1 week, 3 week, 6 week, 12 week thing?
I believe they do the 12-week.
The 12 week one.
Yeah.
Okay, members. When you're looking at the numbers for this, you must assume 100% take up, because from a risk point of view, we need to be provisioning for if there was 100% take up. We can't at this stage guess, even though the evidence suggests that it wouldn't be 100% take up. So I'll open the floor up. Any questions? Councillor Norman.
Thank you. I think this is an admirable suggestion. I'd like a bit more information from Dorset Council. I've attended a few Dorset Lag meetings, which is the group who get together to talk about such a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of the deprivation in a number of areas of Weymouth. I'd ask the town clerk again to contact Dorset Council about what's happening on the Stronger Neighbourhoods initiative. And I'd also ask Dorset Council to provide us with the numbers of children in the schools that are affected, because the numbers have been increasing. I've heard from our new council member that there is a significant number of children who already received this. So I don't know how those figures were arrived at, but there should be data to support what the actual need is, because there are many who already receive preschool, and this extends it into the summer holidays. Is that just based upon this number or what? I'm not quite sure whether the numbers can actually do with that.
Thank you. Yes, I have approached Dorset Council, and the figures are changing all the time.
Yeah.
Sadly increasing.
Yeah.
The number I've used here, 1,780, that comes from May. And within there was a breakdown between the wards, which was very sobering, frankly, very sobering. The Dorset Council scheme began during COVID, and Dorset Council do fund preschool meal vouchers £15 a week. So £3 a week, which is what I'm suggesting, is inspired by the Portland example. It sounds like a small sum, but it's a significantly large increase on the £15, which hasn't changed since it was started.
So this is an augmentation to the £15, or is it to a new set of people that don't qualify for the £15?
Augmentation to £15.
Okay. So they get £18 rather than 15. Yeah, okay, got that. Interesting. Anybody else? Councillor Dickinson, followed by Councillor.
I'd just like to know, I believe that anybody receiving free school meal can apply out of term time, they get £39 a week. Is that right?
Out of term time?
Yeah.
So
So they get free school meals in term time. Out of term time, they can apply for £39 a week.
my information was at 15.
Well, I looked up on the government website today and it's £39.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to ask that question of Dawson Council. You looked that up on the
Yeah.
government website. Okay, Councillor Dickinson.
I mean, this is a noble cause, but what worries me about this is that we have other groups in the area who are in need of support. We have elderly people who are probably having problems with possibly their heating. Other communities or types of people who are in need of help. And what worries me about this is that we're singling out one group as opposed to another. I'm not sure this is really something that for the town council to do. I think this should be something that's either at unitary level or at government level, which is what we pay our taxes for, but rightly to support people. To take this down to local, local parish council level, I'm not sure I'm happy with that. The other thing about this is that once you go down the road of this, you can't take it away. We can't say, well, we tried it and now, we didn't take it away because we don't like it. I think it's so open-ended that I'm just uncomfortable about this because I think we quickly seem to be discriminating against other groups, and where does it end? Because if we're going to go down this route of supporting, this sort of thing, other people are going to come forward and say, well, we want to support as well. It's difficult then to turn that down. So I'm sorry to say I can't say I'm in favour of this, more than as it is.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris.
Thank you. I think a PID is something which is being asked for, and a PID is one that gets the information and the sort of comes back to us eventually with a proposal. I'm totally in favour of having a PID. Let's get all the details sorted out and then come back to this committee with a figure. And it may be for the 1 week, it may be for the 3 weeks, it may be for the 6 weeks, but people will investigate. We'll know what the budget's gone through, and they will be able to ask Mr. Drax whether his government is actually doing what he's saying he's doing, because there's so much money being promised to all these groups that are in need, and yet nobody seems to accept what is actually happening on the ground. So let's do a PID. I propose that we go forward and accept this for a PID and develop the picture more fully so that we can vote on a figure.
Okay, I'm going to ask the town clerk to come in.
Thank you. So if the PID is approved, it will move forward to have a full project plan worked up around it and brought back to council. The item that is missing at the very end of the PID is the assessment for initial, the estimated date for the initial assessment to be completed. Obviously, it's going to be impossible to complete that before Christmas. And with some of the vacancies that the council is currently carrying, it is not going to be something that we will get to immediately in January. We can look to see what we can prioritise. And if Councillor Hamilton is available to assist, that may speed things up. But you are probably looking sort of towards February before we're going to be able to bring back a more costed plan as you've asked for.
Any other members? Councillor, no, you normally have stuff to say on.
If I was asked, thank you very much, I would just say that I absolutely in support of what Councillor Harris said.
Brilliant. Anybody else? Councillor Hope.
What was that about there, Chair?
You don't want
So I'm concerned because although we talk about a PID at the moment, is only really asking for a more informative paper to come forward. It's when we get that paper. And I kind of feel from how Councillor Hamilton spoke, there's a sense of urgency for this. But that in mind, we need something sooner because of the fact we need to set a budget. And I pick up on your point there, we need to budget for 100% take up on this to reduce the risk factor. Councillor Hamilton within the PID alludes to there's a reserve that could possibly use the £50,000. That's not enough to fund the project. So we cannot work this project on the reserve alone. Which then goes back to the next point, the budget. If there's nothing within the budget to do this, that's going to have implications that we cannot fund the project or move forward with it next year. So that's on the process side of things. I think the second side of things is, I think this is, again, I can say, as a working parent with 2 young children, that there are other families in my position that aren't eligible for free school meals that would also love support like this. My bills have gone up like anyone else's. You know, I worry what I'm going to feed my family. So why are we limiting support like this to one group when there are other organisations out there in our town already working that are there to serve the whole community? Nobody wants to say, I've joined the queue at the food bank. It's a dreadful thing to do. People dread having to do that because it takes a lot to go there. But the support is there. And the support the food bank is getting from the wider community at the moment is very large. I was there last Friday on behalf of another organisation I spoke, and it says, yes, numbers are up, but so is the generosity. And I'm sure Councillor Weller probably sees that on Portland. So I can actually support this PID at the moment going forward. I don't think we've got the resources there within an office capacity. And I think it's not something we should be looking at town. But I urge those members of the public that might be watching the live stream and those that come to us as individual councillors, there's support out there. There's the food banks, there's the Nest outreach service both in Weston and Littlemore. There's Warm Welcome that we've just funded as a town council. There's so much support out there. All the residents need to do is ask for that help. And we all know as a collective, 29 of us currently, where that support is. So contact your local councillor if you need support.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to ask the town clerk to comment on the Nest and the food bank at the
Thank you, Chair. So I've spoken to Weymouth Food Bank and the Nest this week about the cost of living crisis and what it means for their service. Both the Nest, which has 2 social supermarkets, and the cafe in Weston, and the food bank, which currently covers 5 sites, I believe, at various times of the week, are both seeing significant increased demands on their services. Both of those groups are considering putting in a funding application to support their work, which is becoming increasingly needed in the area. So that is something that also may be coming forward in the new year. I could roll it all into an options paper for you, vouchers, the Nest, the food bank, to give options, but my concern is the level of funding required and quite where that's going to come from this financial year and next financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just add that I'm glad to hear both the Nest and the food bank are coming forward with an application, because I have told them the support is here if they need it.
But equally, you've been saying that you don't support this. So how come that the Nest can have some money, but not the young children that?
Because they support all families that go through their doors, not just those that are eligible for the free school meals under the current government guidance.
I think the point being, Councillor, is that it's a narrow section rather than the social supermarket, which benefits everybody. I think that was the point. Yeah, several people have made. Councillor Lambert.
Yeah, Councillor Hope was very thoughtful and makes some good points, which I'm considering. But he did say that he was concerned about the ability of officers to come up with the goods in terms of carrying out this bid. Could we just have the town clerk clarifying that position,
Yeah,
please?
it's as I said earlier in this meeting, we currently have capacity issues, we're carrying some vacancies. this isn't something we're going to be able to get at as soon as we come back in January. Our officers are currently working to capacity. I will speak to the assistant town clerk and see if there's any capacity we can free up. But it's not likely that we'll be able to bring something forward before probably February.
So could I just follow up? Would that put this project out of bounds? Because presumably we're talking the holiday period. Councillor Hamilton, do you have any views?
It's true, I did get distracted by the word Christmas, but there's cold weather coming up in half term. We might be able to get something in place. We have to calculate for 100% take up, as Councillor Gray has said. But Portland Town Council hasn't had 100% response rate from schools, reasons unknown. I'd like to push to get out there. This is a difficult question because it's not just children on free school meals who are facing hunger, it's children in families who are just about managing. It's a difficult question because if someone in my ward wants to get to the nest, that's 2 bus rides, cost a packet. This just goes straight into the pockets of parents having to make a choice between eating themselves and feeding their family. I'm passionate about giving some more time to this. I've spoken to schools in my ward, rightly or wrongly, very well aware that it's just in the research stages, and I, as an individual councillor, do not have the ability to just say, here's the money. This is a challenge because, yes, we want to be able to offer long-term consistent support. I think we should come back with some more detail, as Councillor Harris has suggested, and I think we should find ways to support wider segments of the population, like older people who may be struggling, like those with a restricted mobility. This PID does not deny those sections of the community. Just very targeted and efficient.
Thank you, Councillor. I think what I'm hearing is, I'll make a proposal so that it feels like, we need more information, particularly about the funding, what Dorset Council are doing. I'd also like to hear from Portland Town Council on their experience. So given that we've got some contacts there, I'd like to hear about their experience. I think supporting this doesn't preclude us coming forward and supporting other groups in the future. It just stretches our resources even further. But I would hate this committee to make, and we've been conscientious in when we can't make a decision, to defer, get some more information, come back. So I'd like to target the next F&G or the one after. That will then knock us out of this financial year, but also we're specifically then targeting the summer in terms of this paper. So if Councillor Hamilton's, we're not going to be able to support in the short term, but what we might do with a paper with more information is be able to come forward with a proposal from the grant point of view for the summer period, given the restrictions on time and funding. So that's what I'm going to propose, that we defer pending more information. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Huckle.
So, sorry, for clarity, are you saying we defer the PID pending more information?
Yes.
Or do we use the PID to find more information?
Yes. So what we're saying is that we can use the PID, so we're accepting the PID, use it to derive more information relevant to some of the things that Councillor Lincolnson has asked for, some of the things that Councillor Hope has asked for. So we'll beef up the PID effectively, but I would like to target, or like us to, when we get enough information, to target the summer holidays and come back then with do we, don't we, can we afford it, those sorts of things. So at least we've got something on the blocks to be able to do. Councillor Welland.
When are you proposing that this information will come back to us? Did you give us a date?
Yes, so it'll be 15th of March, which will still give us enough time, but will give the officers enough time to get the information, and it'll give us enough time for us to make a decision as to whether we want to support during some holidays. So that decision will be back to you.
And hopefully with giving that length of time, there shouldn't be any slippage on that, should there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's in the minutes, no, so. Well, okay, so, proposed by me, seconded by councillor Huckle. All those in favour?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
All those against?
1,
One. All those abstaining? 2.
2. What you want to know.
Councillor Watley is, we can record that as,
Yes.
and it looks like councillor Northam has left the meeting to go to help councillor Watley. I hope he's. Councillor Northam's not part of the committee. Well, yeah.
Because he has a lot.
I was surprised by it, I thought we were part of the committee. I'll let you know again. Guys. Right, so I do it. Councillor Hamilton, well done. Well done. Because this is not a damn easy subject. And we need to, you know, these sorts of debates, I know it's taken a while in terms of, you know, what it means. We will get the information and we will be more qualified to make the right decision, whatever that be, one way or the other.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so this second amendment to the agenda is that we're moving the Seafront, review of the street food. So item 13, I'm moving that up next before we talk about the budget, because we have, for those of you who don't know, Darren at the back there, member of the public, who's the owner of the upturned boat on the seafront, a long-standing businessman in this town, and the council's worked very closely with him in the past. Darren's got some stuff to say about the review of the beachside food stalls. These predominantly were the food stalls that were down by the Alexander Gardens, where the temporary toilets used to be, and we had the caravan there in some years. So this is a review of that policy. I'm going to ask Charmaine to introduce, and then at an appropriate point, I'll bring Darren in.
Thanks, Chair. As detailed in the report, 2 street food stalls were filed on the promenade opposite Alexander Gardens during summer. Following what officers feel to be a successful trial, it is being recommended to this committee that the council continues with the 2 street food pitches for the 2023 season. The fees are set out within the report. There obviously is a lot of detail in the report. Unfortunately, Jacob that put the report together wasn't available this evening. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to ask, and I'm happy to respond to any questions Darren may have.
So members, any questions about this policy? It's a review of the first 12 months. You've got the numbers and the information in the policy. Any questions? Councillor, followed by Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I think after a year's trial, congratulations to the income generation group who've got this idea moving, to put it in a trial state for this year. My only point here is around timings. So this is a policy timing that units have to be removed and off-site by 11 PM. I understand that there was units in situ for long periods of time this year. Then I assure that we are going to put this in the policy, and it's going to be a rule that it's followed, because I know that put some potential tenders, or people wishing to tender for those positions, off applying because of the logistics of moving units. So we actually lost business as a town council, but then we bent the rules for another operator who was there for a long period of time. So can we either just remove the restriction and maybe put something in place that should a unit stay, the restriction around planning how long it can be there, and that they have to provide adequate security for the unit, which I think is a win-win, or we stick to this rule and not one rule for one and one rule for another.
Do you want to respond to that before I bring in councillor Nicholson and then councillor Webb?
Absolutely. So the ones that were there for a longer period of time, last minute bookings that were taken before the summer holidays, just to fill the gaps, because we didn't have enough bookings. So it felt that we gave the flexibility so we could get potential income, but I'd be happy to enforce those rules off by 10, 11 o'clock, or whatever's in the T&C.
I'm not saying that they should be enforced, I'm just saying, if you felt that's what needed to get the bookings, and well, obviously, from your response it was, sorry, Chair, we're coming straight back in, that was okay. Then maybe we should remove that restriction, just say, where there is a requirement to leave a unit on site, has to be adequately secure or security provided.
Noted. Councillor Nicholson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My only concern about this, I can see it's bringing in revenue, but are we causing too much competition to other traders? And I see there are limitations on what they're allowed to sell, which is selling hot chips and hot dogs and chips and burgers and this sort of thing. What are we expecting them to sell? And is this very restrictive? I don't know, but there's also an issue around, littering and sort of thing, because they're supposed to take their rubbish away, but I expect they put it all in our bins,
Like other traders.
like other traders do. So this I'm not happy about. The other thing is that it mentions the requirement to have public liability and employer liability. I'd like to see something there that says that before anybody is given a license, that we want to see documentary evidence of this. That's all I'm saying. That I think we need documentary evidence of that. I think it's very important. And I think we would need a very robust approach to payment of fees for this, because I don't want this to be people saying they're going to pay, we invoice them and they disappear and we don't get paid. Everything must be paid up front before they take possession of this. I think that's very important.
I'll just answer one of those points before I ask Charlie to come back in, which is the income generation group was to widen the food offer. So, Weymouth has to move on from, not move on, but as well as including chips and hot dogs and candy floss, we need to widen our, that's the seafood festival being successful in the past. So I think some of the things I saw there this year were Caribbean, falafel, grapes. So those are the things that we're targeting. And other towns aren't doing that. Take your point, there is a restrictive list in there. I'll come on to my frustrations about them and I'll let Charlie answer the other
Who
points.
is actually monitoring this? I mean, that's the other thing.
Yes.
I think that crosses over to some points that Dan's probably going to make in a moment. But what I would say is I think this year's been a learning curve regarding monitoring. It definitely needs to be embedded more within the wider resort team. It has been a bit of a crossover at points where sometimes it's been the contract team, sometimes contract and procurement officer, sometimes resort team. So it needs to be embedded that they're monitoring more. I agree with David, we are looking to widen the food office offer, and we may not have, again, it says it within the report. I think this year there's more room to, if we do go ahead, more room for development, we're looking at a wider variety of food outlets to approach. I think we need to be more proactive in our approach to getting different traders onto that pitch rather than waiting for them to come to us.
On the finances, you'll see on the list that's produced sometimes on a quarterly basis from a debtors point of view that there's one on there. We follow our process in terms of payment of bills the same for the street traders as we do everybody else. So I think there's only been one slip up, and we're pursuing that as you know, we do pursue that. I'm going to ask evening Darren. Would you like to come forward and this is Darren. Sorry, while you're coming forward, Darren, I'll take questions. Sorry, Councillor.
I've got a couple of issues with this actually. I walk around from quite a bit during the summer months. I thought some of the stores didn't enhance the look of the promenade at all. In fact, they were tatty. I also read in the list there that vehicles must be removed. Very few of them were. They added to the tattiness So whilst I think it's a great idea offering different foods, and I thought that that was really nice. It was the way that those foods were being offered really didn't enhance what we were doing at all. And I know that we're into income generation, but unless we're generating a lot of money and enhancing the area, I'd rather we didn't generate the income. If it's what I don't know what the opposite of enhance is. My brain's gone a little dead. But it didn't enhance things. So I'm really quite concerned about that. And I know that we've been very critical of the Seafront plans to a certain extent, but one of the things that we were recommended there was that we should perhaps try to move things away from where everything is bunched. And I just wonder, Charmaine, whether you, Jake, and so on have looked at the idea of possibly that being further up the prom where there are fewer food offers already. That may take away the idea of over competing with I'm not just thinking of the seafront things there, but there are lots of little cafes and things along there. There are fewer of the cafe type things further up the prom. So, you know, of course, I think it's great. I think it's terrific. The Caribbean thing was great. Not sure this is the right location, and I'm not sure what these traders are offering us at the moment is quite what we want, whether it's the standard that we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Charlie, do you want to come in?
Regarding the location, something that we are considering for this year, and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at developing the food offer potentially around the clock. So, for example, on bike night, we get a captive audience there of hundreds of bike people turn up on, I think it's Thursday evening. So potentially, we're looking at installing a temporary pitch there for Thursday evenings. That's something we're currently looking at developing, but that's as far as it goes with regards to the pitch.
Aaron, good evening.
Amen.
Would you like to just raise the points from a trader's point of view, what you see and how it went?
Yeah, okay. I think most of you know me to know all of that, but I have been on beach for over 30 years, and we've been there for 60 odd years, so there's not much I haven't seen. Before this trial was agreed last year, I wasn't consulted at all, which I think is probably a little bit disappointing. I have no right to be consulted, but I would have thought, given the proximity to my business, it would have been nice. Originally, these units were billed as a different offer, like you're saying, selling sort of uncompeting products. But if you own a business that sells food and drink, any other person selling food and drink is competing with me. Okay, well, I get what you're trying to do. Once I was sort of told about what was going to be proposed, I knew with my experience there was going to be some problems. I highlighted these things to the council before it started about vans being left on the prom, further competing products would slip into as the season went on because they want to do the products we do because they're the ones that sell. And the units could look and would look unsightly. I was given promises before it happened that in the tender documents these things would be forbidden, and more importantly, it would be policed vigorously. However, it wasn't at all policed. In fact, I've got 12, well, I've got hundreds of photos, but I bought a selection of 12 photos for people to have a look at. Vans that are on the prom, June, July, August. Unsightly pictures of them selling competing products to me. I've got many more, you can pass them around, the dates and times on the back. I also sent emails and had phone calls highlighting the fact they were now slipping and doing competing products, which went completely ignored. Quite frankly, I have nothing to do with my own business without having to deal with this, to be honest with you. So despite all the promises from the council, this was not policed at all, and I have zero confidence that this idea would be policed properly again due to its sort of temporary and haphazard nature, quite frankly. I also had a number of negative comments from locals and visitors on how unsightly the actual units looked. I don't know, some of you may be sitting here thinking this is just a local businessman moaning, and I suppose it is to a degree. But I'm actually here speaking on behalf of several businesses, which I will explain shortly. But I personally have been a proud partner with this council for 30 odd years. And I'm someone that is normally generally passionate and positive about Weymouth in the future. I pay a multiple of what you earn here in rent without any policing. I've invested hundreds of thousands of pounds and passed all sorts of planning board and dealt with stakeholders with years of consultation to do what I've done. I employ over 40 local people. So I'd also like to read out, if I may, and I may go over, but I've got other people I'm representing. So I've got a thing I want to read out here from the owner of the Cactus Tea Rooms and also the owner of the Alexander Gardens. They've done a joint statement. They want to make a point. We've been unhappy about the decision for extra fast food stalls on the Esplanade during the 22 season, and we are very disappointed this is being considered for 2023. Okay, so effectively, you've got your feedback that this was a trial. You wanted feedback. You've got feedback now from 3 separate businesses who basically opposed this for all the reasons I've just said. You've had your £25,000 Hemingway report that says it's already highly congested at the south end of the beach. There's over 37 catering outlets from the clock down, and they say put things at the clock or further north. So simply what we're saying is, you know, we understand you guys are looking to raise more money. I personally would go down the route of caravans or other things like that. That I would look into that. There's more money, less aggravation. But our feedback is we oppose it. We hope you will take our view into consideration when you make any decisions.
Thank you, Darren. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, I have some sympathy with Councillor Weller's view on this, that the trouble with having temporary things there is that when they're only temporary, the people running them don't have a lot of feeling about how it should look. And I think we do pride ourselves in Weymouth that the outlets, including the ones that we have got ourselves, are well kept, they're well run, they look clean and tidy, because we can control them. The permanent traders in the town also have a vested interest in running decently looking businesses because they have a reputation to abide by, whereas I think some of these temporary people don't. They'll come in and they'll just go. And I think, you know, we are trying to make Weymouth slightly less sort of down market. And I think, you know, these sort of things just become tacky outlets if we're not careful. People to make a fast buck on, you know, they don't have to take any account of their reputation like some of the permanent traders do. And I'm, you know, as Councillor Weller has said, I'm not sure the little bit of income we're getting is worth the type of impact that these things are having on the town and on the area in which they're sited. And I'd like to see more support given to those sort of businesses which are making a longer term commitment to this town. And I think this question of being able to police this is very difficult, because at the end of the day, people will buy what they want to buy, and if they want to buy burgers, they want to buy burgers, etc. And trying to control this, I think, is very difficult, because the people that come on these temporary sites want to sell exactly what other people are selling, because let's face it, that's where the demand and the money is to be made. And I have no problem with people making money, but I do feel that I'm not sure this is the right way forward.
Okay. But it's about choice at the end of the day. You can't force people, if they want to buy falafel or Mexican, or they will buy that. If they want to buy a burger, they'll buy a burger. There's plenty of places that do that. So,
well, I mean, certainly there's places like Dancourt, if they want to sell, you know, Indian food or something, they will do. And I don't think there's any control on. If they felt there was a need for this, and there's a need for giving a choice, then they'll give people a choice. Yeah. I don't think why we need to have these people necessarily a choice, because, you know, it's an open market for anybody.
Exactly. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think hearing some of Darren's comments around the issues with the sort of cleanliness, tying the views of the stalls and the bags. This is what you get when you have a pop-up gazebo caterer. Yeah. And trust me, from the events I've organised, they will say, "Can I leave my van on, mate? Got me a freezer in the back." There logistically isn't a way most of these operators can operate without their van beside them to load stock back and forward. So again, I think this goes back to the point I previously made, and I'd like to make an amendment to the policy, is that we remove the restriction of the 11 PM curfew and say that any unit left on site has to have adequate security. That will give us more flexibility on the sort of units you can get in. Obviously, there's a limit how long they can be there in the planning. But that would give us a sense, and I think the more permanent structures that come in are more presentable, in my opinion, from what I've seen. I think we need to tighten up then, and I think the officers recognise this on the policing of conditions. And I think to pick up on Councillor Nicholson's point, it does clearly state here within the policy now that payment has to be made upfront within 14 days of the booking. And we need to strengthen that point by saying setup will not be allowed unless clear funds have been made.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, yes. I remember last week we had a services committee meeting and we met with quite a large number of the people who live in the hotels on the seafront. And they were making a very clear and passionate point. They wanted to see Weymouth go up market. They wanted to see their ability to serve food like we've been discussing tonight for people to come, but they were put off because of the proposals we have for the fairgrounds. And that's what they were talking about. But they wanted to see Weymouth go up market a bit. I think what we've heard tonight is suggesting that this isn't necessarily a way forward. But more importantly, we've had a proposal come in on what we should be doing to the seafront. And I don't think we should be encouraging any form of activity that we aren't doing at the moment until we've had a proper discussion on what we want the seafront to look like. And if that means we want certain things at the far end of the beach, let's make that very clear, make that we're going to move the centre of the activity a bit further along the beach, then let's do that before we then decide where we want to put any other form of activity. We need that seafront proposal first.
Any other comments? Councillor Ware.
Just very quickly, because I don't want to extend this, but when we first started talking about this, I had in my mind's eye that it was going to be a bit like, you know, when you go through Bristol with their little street food things, where you have Caribbean and Mexican and so on, little tiny things literally popping up. And if you watch things like MasterChef and so on, these pop-up restaurants are the way forward for fancy chefs to then become viable businesses. So I wouldn't want us to discourage that. But I still come back to, I don't think this is the way, and I don't think this is the location at the moment, given all the things we've been saying in the past. So I agree with Councillor Harris, we do need to decide what it is we want from our seafront before we start embedding ourselves in something that we maybe don't want.
Thank you. I'm going to close this down.
Yes, we go to the vote, Chair.
Yes, okay, so the recommendation is on the screen now. It's recommended that the council continues to operate 2 street food pitches on the promenade opposite Alexander Gardens with the fees for 23-24 set out in the above report. So proposed, somebody?
Sorry, Chair, I did request an amendment.
You did.
Do that within this motion, or whether we need to request the policy back separately, or the clarity would be appreciated.
We can. Yes, we can request it tonight. So can you just give your wording on the amendment?
So within the bullet point of pitch operating times, it clearly says we have to be off-site by 11 PM. Following officers' feedback, I'm saying we remove that and say it can be there at a maximum set number of days in line with what planning will run. I don't know what that is, I'm afraid. However, adequate security must be provided for the unit. The second amendment, it would be on under the payment that we make it clear within that says setup will not be able to commence unless clear funds transition to.
Payments we made.
Yeah.
Accepted. So with those 2 amendments, I'm still looking for somebody to propose. Because if it doesn't get a proposal, this is going to fall. Proposed by Councillor Hope, seconded by. I will second it. Because we need to put this to the vote. So, all those in favour? Two. All those against?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
And any abstentions?
1, 2, 3.
That policy falls.
Can we stress, Chair, that it falls because of this particular circumstance? A similar one elsewhere with different foods, maybe whatever, and got different standards applied, it should be brought before us. I don't want nothing to happen. I just want this one to be the example. As
Yes.
the first trial, and say, no, we want some amendment to it.
Well, we said we would set out an income generation group to trial things. We've done that and it's fallen. It's the second one, if you remember, because we trialed the seating. Those of you who remember the seating opposite, that failed as well. So we're not afraid to try things. We probably will come back with,
This can go for a retrial.
yes, somewhere else maybe, or.
We just voted on an amendment to the policy.
It was substantive, I think.
Yes.
So it was the substantive. So it amended policy, then became the substantive.
I thought where councillor Home was saying that he just wanted an amendment to certain items within the policy. Not on the actual, do we go ahead with the street?
It was embedded in that.
Yeah, I was getting advice in my ear to say the policy was amended and it then became the substantive policy that we voted on. Is everybody happy with that, or would you like a vote? Everybody
I
happy?
don't think it'll really change.
Okay. Moving on. Thank you very much. Thank you, Darren, for attending.
Thank you for your speak, I appreciate it.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Right.
Do you want my councillor?
Probably, I'll think about it.
We are now moving on to a substantive item, the draft budget and precept. I'm going to ask Ian, Deputy Town Clerk, to introduce.
Could I ask a question ahead of this, which is, given that Councillor Watley has had to leave for health reasons, he was anxious to be able to vote on this. He asked if I could be delegated. I know normally one has to give notice of delegation.
24 hours.
Currently, standing orders require 24-hour notice and there's no provision currently in standing orders for in-meeting or partial meeting substitutions.
And if councillors are happy with that, then I shall.
I've got some sympathy because, if anything, Councillor Watley has got a deal of knowledge on this subject,
Yeah.
because he was part of the subgroup. So,
And he did tell me what he would vote.
yes. Is it within my gift to allow that?
It's standing orders. and
You can say how you would have voted.
So it's not within my gift.
Okay.
No, but
May I provide a summary of how he would have voted then? To represent him.
I will allow you to do that after Ian has introduced me. Councillor Hamilton.
Chair, I'm as keen as anyone to talk to this item. I can't help but notice we've got members of the team.
I know, and I did ask that question earlier on, but I was told that the item that Ben is going to speak on would stay where it was on the agenda.
Okay.
Sorry, Ben.
Just delegate that.
Yes. No, we're going to the, we're going to go to the budget, because this is a standard item on the agenda. So, Deputy Town Clerk, would you like to introduce, please?
Chair, I will stand if you don't mind, just
Yes.
where I'm positioned, and I'm a bit old fashioned like.
I'd like to follow with some bits up you, sir.
Yeah, so I will keep this brief, this initial thing, Chair, and we can come back to any questions that members have. The budget papers which you have within the information which is circulated, the number side of stuff is based on having a preset which is set at a 0% increase. Now, that was done as a result of the work undertaken by the budget working group, and they were looking to see if it was feasible to have a 0% increase. And by doing that, Chair, they were able to do that. And we'll see the papers by removing potentially 2 posts which relate to the community development post and the project post. And obviously we'll discuss if there's any implications of removing those as we go through the debate, Chair. The precept is there to fund three elements of expenditure, the day-to-day running of normal council services. It's there to be able to fund those corporate priorities which have been forward and agreed, and it's also there to be able to replace and maintain our fixed assets. Chair. The supplies and service elements of the precept, just as a comparison between what we have before us now and where we started in 2019, the supplies and services, which is everything which excludes the employee costs, has reduced by just under £450,000. So that's physical budget which has been removed. If you then build into that the effects of inflation over those, which will be 5 years from 2019, the purchasing power of the budgets has reduced again by probably about 1/5, which is 20%. So you can see here that the one service element, the purchasing power of that has reduced, and that does cause some concerns to officers in terms of service provision. As part of the budget proposals, they because we are removing budgets of more contingent nature, such as legal consultants within that budget. The budget does depend on the creation of and the establishment of new reserves around consultants, so that we still have a resource there, Chair, should we need it, because those have actually been removed from the budget as part of the proposals. But what I'm concerned about as an officer and the Jane as RFO and myself as the Deputy RFO, part of the cornerstone of town and parish council budgeting is there's always elements whereby the precept contributes to reserves, because you need to be able to maintain reserves over a number of years, because once you use them, they are gone. And if you don't replace those, Chair, then obviously you store up a few problems going forward in terms of maintaining your assets and finding enough funding and budgets for those priorities which the council may wish to follow through. And I'll just sort of finish there, Chair, because I know that there'll be a lot of people I know you'd like to pick up on the budget working group, but the final element of fees and charges have gone through the services committee. They are there as a default. The services will pick those up and review those as we go forward. I don't think there'll be a need to go through and detail those. That's something which will be picked up.
Thank you, thank you. So just a couple of words from me. Fair to say the budget working group, for those of you who have been on it before or didn't know, Councillor Watley, Councillor Nicholson, Councillor Huckle and Councillor Hamilton and myself, and this was probably the hardest in 4 years in my view. I've lived and breathed these as they have. If you want a quick visual of how hard those 4 people work, that's the document you look at. That document there gives you line by line every single budget that we looked at. But a big clue is the red lines are the ones that we reduced, and there isn't much that's not red. And that's literally where we played it. We went through every cupboard, every hole, every budget. I'd like to say thank you to those guys, because they bringing this forward to you so that you can make a recommendation to full council. The budget holders themselves, that's Tara, Tony, Charmaine, and Jane, went through a fairly rigorous cross-examination, it felt like in some cases, and the energy in the room, we needed to keep that up because it's hard going. And that was done in a spirit of trying to achieve the widest possible options for you guys. And that's the reason that we focused on the 0, which was cutting below the line. We wanted to get to that number to present it as an option, but you need to understand the risks of that, up to a +5 option, which would suffice all of the things that we need to do next year. And I think that's in the background of the effective and efficient way the officers have run the last 3 years, and we continually honed the budgets. And that's been hard. reinventing service, and we're getting to the stage now where there is not, without substantive intervention in people, there isn't much left to reinvent. So in the background of that, I'd like to say thank you to those guys and the budget holders. It was a hard couple of months for you to debate. We'll open it up. I think what I'll firstly do. Yes, thank you. There is also on item 18, information items. There's a letter from the internal auditors, which was not prompted, I promise you, not prompted by us, but lays out the risks in terms of what you vote for. So if you vote for 0, these are the risks. That was independently assessed by them. Still an option for you. I'll come to you in a minute, Councillor. Still an option for you, but it was independently assessed. I urge you to, if you haven't read it already, have a glance over that, because it makes some interesting points in there. I think that's it from me. I'm going to go to Councillor Northam first, because I want to hear from what Councillor Watley has to say, although I won't allow him to vote, and then I'll come to Councillor Hope.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Watley was quite short in what he said. He said 0% isn't right because of the things which have to be cut. He'd prefer to see 5% because we ought to be thinking to the future and not just what we can do today. He was very keen that the work under the 3%, the project development officer and the
Community development.
The community development, particularly the community development work, went forward. Representing Malcolm Regis Ward, that was a big concern for him. So that was his sort of preference list. So start with 5%. That's what he would vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hope.
Thank you very much, Chair, and just following in really from your introduction and the point out of the item 18 letter. I just want to make members aware that as Chair of the Services Committee, I've requested a services budget briefing that will take place on Wednesday, the 4th of January at 7 o'clock in this chamber, to inform members what proposed risk to services will be a result of the budget that you propose here. So if you propose a 0%, which will see significant cuts to budgets that will have a direct impact on services, you will be informed about what those services maybe look like under these new budget proposals at that meeting. And that meeting or briefing is open to all. So I wanted to do that because it's the first year that I've had officers come to me to say, we're concerned on what proposals are on the table and the impact on services that will be provided. With that part of my hat off as the Chair of Services, I just wanted to say that, and it follows on from the PID that we saw earlier from Councillor Lucy Hamilton, that this year is going to be tough. But I think I congratulate the budget working group for bringing these proposals forward to us. Because not one of these proposals is 9% that inflation is. And that proves the hard work that the budget working group have done to make sure that we can still deliver services, but at the right cost to the taxpayer. I think the other thing to note, and for us to consider here, that whilst we may want a 0%, or even some of us a -% reduction, which if anyone wants to see, I'd love to see your alternative budget, I must add. But the services we provide as a town council will be more important to our residents than ever before this year. We're talking, residents that normally holiday abroad that won't be able to afford to. So the use of our beach in the summer is the best their families are going to get. We talked about families that would normally, working families that would normally go to places like Fort Park, Alton, Park Towers. Their day trip will be a trip to Bradford Parks and Gardens. So, we really need to say, whilst we want to reduce it to support our residents, we have to be realistic and understand the importance of our services and what we provide. And we need to make sure that the funds are there to adequately support them for our residents.
And Councillor Hamilton, I'll invite you to come in as you are keen to say something.
I mentioned that earlier, didn't I?
You don't have to.
Well, all I did want to say actually is to thank you for your leadership through this process, because it was rigorous, and to thank also the officer team that came forward with suggestions, but particularly to you for leading on this process. None of us wants to put the precept up, but we've got to maintain the level of services. That's really all I'm going to say. I have a question on the posts that are proposed for deleting, just to clarify. Those are posts that are currently not
Vacant, yes.
taken.
So if you take the 3% option or the 5% option, both of those posts can be reinstated.
Do we have people in those posts currently? No.
They are currently vacancies.
Thank you.
The other thing that you should be aware of, it is in the paper, but I'll reiterate it, is the thing that is scuppered us a little bit is inflation, obviously, and that therefore drives a payroll increase, and the payroll was circa 7% last year. In this paper, in either option 0, option 3 or option 5, it assumes 8% payroll. So we've changed the way we've done that by assuming 8% rather than assume 2 and then try and scrabble to find money to support it. We put 8% straight in, which we felt was a fairer and more open and honest way of doing it. So those are in the paper, so you don't need to worry about that. The local government guidelines is between 6 and 10. Councillor Legg, followed by Councillor Nicholson.
Following on from your last thing, do you think that's what the auditors are inferring we might like to consider doing in their recommendation about an inflationary? We strongly recommend the town council consider an inflationary budget increase.
They are talking about, in inflationary budget increase, they're talking about not just payroll, but the whole thing, because, and I'll give you an example, there are people that supply us with services, and I would say specifically services that are supplied to us that involve high content of people, and I'll use the RNLI or the waste contract as another example where it's people heavy reliance cost wise. Those people are trying to pass the increased cost because they've had significant payroll issues onto us. So what we used to get for our money in the RNLI, if you go for option 0, will not be affordable for this year. The 3% and the 5% it would be. So they are recommending, to answer your question.
Can I follow that through?
Yes.
So if you're being prudent by suggesting 8% is what is factored into the budget, so that
Payroll budget.
payroll,
Okay.
only the payroll, not
Yes.
the rest of it. The other two things you mentioned, RNLI and the cleansing thing. Well, it depends on what level of service we end up with in the end, could be even more than that.
Well, in the 3% option and the 5% option, the inflationary pressures on those two items are included. So if you vote for 3%, you'll get the waste contract that we negotiated. At the price.
My question to you is, if you're assuming 8% anyway for staff, which is the biggest lump we have by a long way.
Yes.
But why isn't there an 8% option on the increase in the council tax?
Because there are, sorry, did you want?
I'm just thinking.
We could have one. We could have one, but my view is that as we've learned as a council and as the officers have learned, we've become more efficient in some of the things we do, much more efficient, particularly around some of the services we offer. For instance, fees and charges, we're much more professional now in the way we do that. So 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago nearly now, we inherited, well, frankly, it was a mess.
And I would agree with you, by the way. I'm asking a question, being a bit of a devil's advocate, because but they say inflationary increase without mentioning any idea of what, I mean, anything above 0% would satisfy them, it would appear.
No, I think what the internal auditors are recommending is that councils consider an increase to their budgets of an amount that reflects inflation itself, which is currently at 12. 9. well, it changes on a daily basis, but currently at 9.5%. For clarity, the negotiations on the pay settlement for next year have already begun. And I understand that the unions have gone in with a request for 14.5%. Which is significantly higher than their normal 10%, don't they?
Councillor Nicholson, patiently waiting.
Yes, first of all, I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Hamilton's view that we did work very hard on this, but I'd like to also note the fact that I think you, David, did a very excellent job on leading this, because it was a very difficult process. The other thing is, we've talked about hardship in the town, and I think everybody's agreed to this. We did have a very detailed look at this budget. We came up with a 0% increase option because we felt that it could be done. I don't think there was any reason to suggest it couldn't be done, and that's why we put it in. And I think we do have to take account of the hardship that people are facing, and that we have to do our bit to ensure that we mitigate that as far as possible. And the council tax precept is one area where I think we can be proactive in that. The other thing that concerns me slightly is this report from the internal auditors. I'm uneasy about internal auditors whose role is not, I don't think, to recommend things to the council. I think the internal auditors are there to look at process and comment on those processes where they may be failing or otherwise. And as far as I'm concerned, none of our processes are failing. They are not in a position to have gone through the type of look at the budget that we as a group were entitled to do. And I think it's outside of their remit to start making proposals like that when they have no detailed knowledge of the budget process going forward. So I'm unhappy about it. But I do think we have to look seriously at the fact that we do possibly need to have a 0% increase because of the relative hardship that people are going through.
Duly noted. You'll see on the screen, hopefully, the impact that 0, 3 and 5 will have, and the equivalent at 44 pence a month, I think. So just so that we're, and that was asked for by, I can't remember who, but somebody asked me for it, and we produced that. That will go out to full council as well. So, yes, go ahead, Colin.
Thank you. I have to admit that my input to this working group was not as much as I would like, because on 2 occasions the meetings just wasn't available. But I was kept in the picture all the while, and I think the key thing really is, if you look at this paragraph to do with the 5%, which is, I think, a very strong hint from our financial advisors in the office's part, that already to keep the same service from the waste partnership would have required a lot heavier drive than we had to absorb. We know from recent indications that the RNLI really want to increase their request for funding to cover the existing service that they're prepared to talk for future year. But if we don't have them, or they're very limited, we have health and safety issues. Now, these 2 posts that we haven't had and may want, there must be some justifications through the council about those 2. But we did reduce it by 5% a year ago. So if we do the 5% increase, it only takes us back to where we were. And as you say, it's whatever, 40 pence a month, and over 50% of our people are on A and B grades in any case, and very small number on D above.
Thank you, Councillor Huckle. Councillor Weller. Followed by Councillor Harris.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would totally oppose the removal of those 2 posts. We have been working with one hand tied behind our backs for the last 3 years without a really good community engagement officer. There are so many projects that are just sitting and backing up things. You know, we've said very much that we want to be a council that develops our community. We can only do that if we have a community engagement officer, and that development of community and community engagement will in fact make us much stronger, and will ultimately, I believe, be a saving because services will be provided by other people other than us. So there'll be a very good return on the money. Projects as well. Our project officers at the moment are staggering under the load of projects that we keep asking them to look at, and we simply can't do. So, you know, we've spent huge. Sometimes you spend a whole lot of money and then you don't follow it through. The money you've spent is wasted, and we spent a huge amount of money developing a new staffing structure. Part of that staffing structure is that we require community engagement officer and another project officer. If we don't take that out, we might just as well have not spent the last 12 months and the money over the last 12 months in developing that staffing structure. We could have stayed as we were. So it will be a waste of money if we don't do that. I never would support a reduction in council tax. I don't support a zero because things don't stand still. I think the idea of not having a proper RNLI service on the beach is total madness. The biggest reputation for this town as a seaside town, and so many of you insist that that's its biggest asset, is that we are the safest beach along the south coast. That probably means along in the country. We want to risk losing that by not being able to afford for the RNLI to be properly represented there. Absolute madness. I'm always shattered by the idea that we should reduce rates when our base rate is so low. I know people talk about our rates being so high. They really aren't. When you look at it properly, you look at the base rate, we have so many A's and B's. You know, I was going to say words failed me, but they obviously haven't. So that's changed.
Never. Councillor Harris, followed by
Thank you.
Councillor Lambert, followed by Councillor North.
I think we should start thinking of how we market something. A 0% increase in our precept, in our council tax, is actually a 9 or 10% cut. Let's remember that. Prices have gone up everywhere. So we're talking about a cut of 10% if we went to that 0% precept. That is something this evening's discussions that we've had have suggested to us that some of the things we would like to do as a council can't be done now, let alone if we had to cut by a further 10%. So we've got to think carefully what it is we want to do as a council. Now, we've also heard tonight that people have been saying we should be trying to share the load and allow only things that happen to provide everybody with what they want. The council taxes everybody equally, but it taxes me and I can afford to pay it. And I'd rather pay something into the system that then can help those that most need it, rather than giving it to other people like myself who can afford whatever we're going to be charged. So let's make sure that what we do is allow those that are sufficiently well off to make a contribution, but if we then reallocate that to support those in greatest need by either having services that they need or giving money to people who can deliver the services that they need, then surely we're actually doing the right thing.
Councillor Lambert.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I like to think I've kept myself well informed, but I'm going to show a deficiency in a moment, and I trust you will put me right, Chair. I've been on the budget working group. I suspect it hasn't changed dramatically in the way that it goes forward. I've been on services committee throughout the period of this administration. What I haven't done is to keep a careful eye on what goes on in human resources, and here lies my ignorance. Now, I'm very much aware that there's been rejigging of the staffing arrangement, certainly in the top echelons. This isn't helpful to the discussion now, but I do want to get this on the agenda unless I'm mistaken. But I feel that we took over a staffing arrangement at, if you like, the lower echelons from the previous borough council. And to my memory or knowledge at least, we've never actually looked at whether those staffing arrangements are suitable given all the changes that have taken place internally and externally. And I think that if we don't address that in this term, i.e. next year, then you know, we are slipping up. And if my memory serves me rightly, Chair, services, sorry, the Parks and Gardens area, the cost of our person power is 800,000.
Correct.
Now, am I wrong? Have we ever looked in detail at what our people do for that money?
Okay, I'll start at the beginning. The HR committee has and still does review the structure. So that is an ongoing piece of work which Councillor Weller leads, and there are several people here that are on. So what you identified is, are we clear in today's world that the structure fits the services that we offer? It's true to say there is some misalignment. That is being worked on. I promise you faithfully, you know how precious I'm about the money. It is being worked on. So it's a sensitive area, isn't it? Because there are real people. If you say, and you and I've been schooled by you many times about the way that parks and open spaces could, should, maybe we could do it in a different way. And I think that's probably a challenge that is going to come this way at some point in the next 12 months, because it is the largest part of the budget. And we are duty bound, aren't we? Because if you take in the payroll and everything else, it's 1.4 million. It's the biggest piece of the pie, really. So that is being worked on, led by Councillor Weller. There will be things coming forward in the next 6 months, which hopefully you'll be able to advise on. And do we need to find different ways of doing those services? Absolutely, yes. And I'll just wrap that up with two other quick comments for clarity. The project, so under option, I'll call it option 3% and option 5%. The project manager vacancy and the community development vacancy are not new roles. They are vacancies that have been held. So there isn't an increase in the numerical count. But I think Councillor Weller said we've had one hand tied behind the back. That's what you're hearing from officers, because we haven't filled that vacancy. Project's slowing down, and that's hampered, I think, some throughput. So that is absolutely right. But if you vote for the 3% option, so 0 RNLI, the waste contract will be secure, whichever option you choose. RNLI is compromised, as will other services, I think. 3% options restores everything that you get. The 5% option probably, and I'll call it wiggle room, and that's not an official financial term, but the 5% allows wiggle room under the reserves. We do need to do a piece of work, and you'll see in the recommendations around realigning some of the reserves, because again, we're 2 years out of date, and I'm conscious I need to do that piece of work. We started on it, and we'll come back to this committee with a recommendation to realign the reserves for the future. The structure, reserves, and probably service plans, which Councillor Hope leads under the services will be the things that we'll be doing. But really important for me.
So may I just come back?
Yes.
On that. Thanks for that reassurance, Chair, and I look forward to those pieces of work coming forward. Just on the increase in the interview of myself and the Green Party members, we are of the mind that we need to go for this increase, much so it is regretted, because I'm really fearful over inflation. We've got no idea what's going to be happening this time next year, and at the risk of sounding political, the way things are going nationally, I don't see that we've got to grips with inflation.
We haven't.
And I'm extremely concerned about that. I think you've done well to only be suggesting a 5% increase. Quite frankly.
Well, if you, in the background of what you saw today announced by the Treasury, where we're at 98.8 billion pound deficit for the government. The World Bank said if you go over 100 billion, your AAA rating is affected. So we've got the heaviest borrowing we've had, and it will drive inflation because the debt repayments are in the tens of billions now for the government. So I think that inflation, we've got a long way to play out with that. In my view, it's a sort of macro financial area. I'm going to go to. Councillor Nickinson first, and then Councillor Norman.
Yeah, can I just, on a specific point on this, I just wanted to pick up the councillor was suggesting about the RNLI. We had a lengthy debate at budget review on this. There was never any suggestion that we were going to do away with the RNLI. I think there was some debate around best usage of it and whether we could look at the service in terms of better value for money. So there was no suggestion it was going to be done away with, but there was some views around, as I say, whether we could use the resource better and in the important areas of the beach. Okay, so not a question of doing away with it.
Yeah, just to answer that, we've had a communication with the RNLI now, and they come back to us with what the picture will be in future years. It did not make great reading, I have to say. I wasn't aware of the small amount of the total price that we actually fund. That makes very stark reading. There is a report coming back to services, which Councillor Hope will pull through in terms of the full picture. Just to reiterate, to sustain the current RLNI project for next year, 3% and above. If it's zero, there will be RNLI service, it will just be less weeks. And it's up to you to decide that. So I'm going to go to Councillor Dickinson first, because he did ask before you, and then I'll come to Councillor Norman. As you're not on the committee, Councillor Norman, Councillor Dickinson's earned the right to the word.
In all the options, is there a schedule of works on the building?
Say that again, Councillor.
In all the options, 0, 3 and 5, is there a schedule of works? Has that been put into it yet?
No, the schedule of works is not due to come back until March.
Yeah.
But we already have a reserve established.
Yeah, but we took a large sum out of that for this building.
We did. We have other. So if you remember, my previous point was when I answered Councillor Lambert, we need to realign the reserves. We have money in reserves which isn't doing anything.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to do is I'll get that report, I'll bring it back to you and say, how many years do you want to do it over? How much do we need to do? This is what we've got available. We can choose the priority. So I'm
It's
on
got
it.
to be ongoing.
Yes, yes, it has. I'm on it, but it's just taking time. Councillor Norman, as you're not on the committee, but I'll let you know how to speak.
Thank you.
Unlike Councillor Hope.
Yes, we won't go there. Much of what I wanted to say has been said respectively. 0% is not a no change to what we do as a council.
Yeah.
You've made that point clear. Councillor Harris put it really well. And Councillor Puckle mentioned that last year 5%. So this year we are sadly taking back that 5% that we gave the previous year. So if you look at it in the long term, it is a 0% this year. At 0% zero, yeah. And with inflation running at 10%, I think we're lucky not to be having to consider a much higher level of increase. And I would point out that the 5% represents 8.82 per band D in a year. I think losing the services for a 0% is just not worth that consideration. I think that the project officer and such like is really good. I think the flexibility that the 5% provides, particularly to pick up on Councillor, can't remember Dickinson's, Councillor Dickinson's last point, we need to be in a position where we can still offset future costs. And that's one of the reasons where the 5% helps us and gives us more flexibility. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start to bring this to a close. It is 9 o'clock and I wanted to get through this particular point. So I'm looking for somebody to make a recommendation. So just to be clear, the recommendations are to approve and recommend to full council the proposed fees and charges, which we've done. Approve and recommend to full council the proposed budget for 23-24. Therefore, you have to choose one of the options and agree a precept amount. So, councillor.
Just a matter of procedure, when you come to choosing which of those increases we want, 0, 3 or 5, I presume is what I propose, 0, 3 and 5, by the way. Can we have all 3 in there so that you can we can vote for one of them? And then if there's no 50% out of it, then you take out the smallest one and vote between the 2 biggest ones. Now, there is a precedent for this because the town clerk a couple of years ago, when choosing the mayor, when we had 3 candidates, we voted on all 3, and then the one that was least votes was out, and then we voted on the last 2.
The rules for voting for mayor are very different from the rules.
And can we have an indicative vote of all 3 first?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 0 first. I'm going to say, do I have a proposer or 0 and a seconder? We'll vote on that, and then we'll debate the 3 and 5. So let's take the first option. So on the 0% increase proposed by Councillor Dickinson, seconded by Councillor Nickinson. All those in favour of 0% increase in the precept?
That's
2. All those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh,
No,
it's 9.
9.
Sorry, that owl gets.
So that could be 11 because Councillor Watley isn't here.
Yes.
Okay. So 0, option 0 falls. Everybody happy with that in terms of voting? So now we debate the 3 and 5. I'm going to do the same thing, Councillor Lee. That suffices for what you. Well, I'm the chair. So I'm
gerrymandering, but carry on.
Noted. So I'm looking for a proposer for the 3% option. So proposed and seconded. Do I have a proposal? Proposed by Councillor Hope, seconded by myself. Let's vote. All those in favour of the 3% option?
2.
All those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
11 and no abstentions. Okay, come to the 5% option. Proposer, please. Councillor Huckle, seconded by Councillor Weller. All those in favour of the 5% option? This is the recommendation for council.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All those against?
1, 2, 3, 4.
No abstention.
No.
So it is the will of this committee, based on the voting, we would recommend a 5% increase in the precept, reversing last year's -5 to full council. So can I? So do I need now to vote on the other things on the recommendation? The other, so I'm going to need to do this. So
Each in order.
each in a one. So the recommendations from the Finance and Governance Committee is asked to approve and recommend to full council the proposed fees and charges for 23-24, which was in your paper. Do I have a proposal for that, please? Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Legg. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's unanimous.
Number 2 on the recommendations is approve and recommend to full council the proposed budget for 23-24, and if required, a reallocation of some reserves. Now, briefly spoken about this, we do need to do a piece of work as a result of you, and Councillor Dickinson has highlighted one of the issues. As a result of you voting for the 5% option, the officers, well, however, we'll need to go away and come back with some reallocation of bits and pieces, because we've taken away some budget lines, and I'll use legal, so there's no budget for legal in the 5% option, but it will go into a reserve. It's just a much more efficient way of doing it when you're not taking legal advice on an ongoing basis, because it's up and down. So that's what that means. So approve and recommend to full council proposed budget for 23-24, and if required, reallocation of some reserves I've recommended. Can I just add an amendment which will come back to this committee or full council? Which will go to full council. Okay, that's fine. So proposal for that option 2, council.
Sorry, Chair, point of order, can I just, we're voting on the budget.
Yes.
But we've already voted on the increase, so what are we voting on? I'm not quite sure. We're voting on the budget with an increase of 5%, are we? Which we've already voted on.
We are. I'm just following. I'm just getting in my following in. Do you want to point on that? Because I got into trouble last year for this because I said the same thing. And
I think what would be useful, Chair, is if we could take the point 3, which is the precept, which is the figure which you have in front of you, and then the budgets where we take it to full council to be reflected and what that increase.
so I could just take that as a single recommendation.
I would just take the precept as.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. That's so. Because I got into trouble last year about doing this. Yeah. So if you look at option 3 in the recommendation, agree a precept amount to recommend to full council on the 11th of January. The amount is £3,413,900. That is a 5% precept increase, which will drive on band D 74 pence a month. So can I have a proposal for that? Councillor Harris, seconded by.
There's a question. Why isn't that figure you've just given us the same as that figure in the 5% increase in amount of precepts? Because the budget you're talking about, isn't it?
This is what we got in trouble last year.
So there has been a slight uplift in the band D equivalent. And so the all of the papers which we had, you have before was based on the original tax
18069 tax base.
So we have to reflect that slight change.
You've already had that.
Yes,
Revision, because I think last year it came after we passed it.
too late to change the papers.
All right, thank you.
So there's been a slight increase, but not, it won't be substantial enough to change what you voted. That's where I'm reading. Okay, so you've seen the recommendation proposed by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Huck. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All those against?
1, 2, 3, 4.
And no abstentions. At least consistent. Thank you, members. That felt like a very long 2 or 3 months. And again, my thanks go to my colleagues who we did work on, didn't we? It did, yes. Okay, item 10 is the draft advertising policy. This feels like a soap opera as well. We've been at this a few times. If you remember the background, sorry, who's going to introduce this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask Charlene to introduce.
As requested at the recent, last F&D meetings, the governance group has drafted an advertising policy. Procurement of the advertising schemes are due to commence in January, so policy needs to be agreed in advance of this. Members are being asked, as per the recommendations in front of you, any questions, please feel free to ask, but thanks to the governance group for putting this together.
You see in the recommendations, there's an issue around the amendment on coal, oil and gas. I can tell you for background, in the top 100 advertisers by value in the country, there's only one in that category, and that's British Gas. So the likelihood of getting anything from coal, oil and gas is very low. But you want to do within your view, put that in the. That's that.
Yeah, I've been contacted by Councillor Wakeling, who did hope to be here, and he wished to speak in favour of this. I think right, he is the person behind this report, isn't he? And for reasons which from the time I'll free you from you going on about it, I would support it as well. And hope that other members will support that addition, even if it never comes to pass that we need it. I think it's important that it's in there.
This is the amendment on the coal oil.
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Dickinson.
Well, I wouldn't like it in, because I think the coal, oil and gas provide an absolute vital function for this country. And seeing what they're doing, especially with the fuel that they're now testing with Rolls-Royce, that produces no gases at all, which I think is absolutely wonderful. I think the coal that we're going to mine in Cumbria is absolute vital to this country's security. And I think that the government took a very good line on that. Why should we import that coal that we need for the production of the steel from other countries in the world where their human rights records are absolute rubbish? Where we produce, mine the coal out of our own country, reducing all the necessary gases that come out to get it to this country. And it provide jobs and everything. I just think this is a nanny state and just going along with what the latest craze is. So I don't think it should be in at all.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak to this item?
I second the proposal that
So the proposal from Councillor Lambert is option A.
Recommendation A.
Recommendation A. Councillor Lambert proposed, Councillor Harris seconded. So I'm going to ask for a vote now. All those in favour of A?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All those against?
1, 2,
And one abstention.
2.
Two abstentions.
So that is carried, and that is now included in the draft advertising policy, which you are now asked to agree to recommend to full council.
So be it.
With a review after 1 year.
Yes.
It's important.
Okay, you can let Councillor Wakeling know that all his hard work has come to fruition.
Propose that. There's a recommendation B, I'm proposing it.
and I'm seconding it.
Yes. Yes, so the committee agrees to recommend the adoption of the draft policy to full council. Councillor Legg, followed by Karen House. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All those against?
2.
And two abstentions.
Thank you.
Item 11 is the stability and respect page. I'm going on to town clerk to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. The National Association of Local Councils, NALC, who we are a member of, the Society of Local Council Clerks, CSLCC, who I'm a member of, and One Voice Wales, who none of us are a member of because they only cover Wales, have all worked together to on a much wider project to ensure that civility and respect are at the top of the agenda and the heart of council work in our sector. To this end, they have produced the Civility and Respect Pledge, and they are asking all local councils to consider signing up to this. It's a relatively easy process that we can do online. I understand that the number of councils who have already signed up to this is fast approaching 900 out of about 10,000 that I think. It is quite early on though. Right, I was just looking for another paragraph. I thought it was important, and I put it in the report to say that by our council signing up to the Civility and Respect Pledge, we're demonstrating that our council is committed to treating councillors, employees, members of the public, and representatives of partner organisations and volunteers with civility and respect in their role. The council currently has no such issues. This is not being brought forward as a way to deal with issues in this council. However, it will protect us in the future, and more importantly, it will show solidarity with our fellow councils in the local government sector who may be going through issues at the moment, and I'm sure we've all seen at least one or two viral parish council meetings where civility and respect have maybe not been at the heart of those meetings. We do ask that the council signs up to this to show solidarity and to show our continued commitment to civility and respect at all levels of the council's working. And the recommendation is that this committee recommend the signing of the pledge to full council.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Chair. Of course, I've got no issues with signing up for this. It sounds like absolute common sense and everything we should be doing as individuals at over council. What's quite concerning is when you look at the organisations that are driving this, surely there's better things that they should be doing. Because I seem to think, I said earlier about the grants policy, and that act's been around since the 1800s or something. We've got often hear that. Surely it's these out of date acts that those agencies should be looking at, but I think that's another matter, and I'm happy.
It is, it's 9:20.
Yeah, just very briefly, I'm very much in favour of this. My only slight concern about this is this business about including sanctions for elected members where appropriate. My understanding was that the only sanction you can have against an elected member is for their people who elect them to vote them out, and I'm not quite sure what it means by sanctions, because what does it mean?
Well, code of conduct for councillors is handled by Dorset Council anyway, so.
Yeah, but there are not sanctions.
There are none.
You can't sanction.
That last point is about continued lobbying for changes in legislation to support the pledge, including sanctions for elected members where appropriate. So it's lobbying for sanctions to be brought in, because you're correct. Currently, there are no sanctions at all.
Yes, we can't get rid of councillors, for instance, for talking over the chair or. Councillor Ware, sorry, you wanted.
There were sanctions, but they were removed.
So can I go to the vote?
Well, I just want to endorse what Councillor Hope said. There's nothing new in here for us, as far as I'm saying. There's a waste of time considering it, because I believe we already do that and would continue to.
Yes. Councillor Gibson.
I'd agree with Councillor Legg and Hope. We're already signed up to a councillor's code of conduct. We all sign that before we start, and we should all be aware of it. And I just think that this is, I noticed that the groups that are pushing this are officers. All of them, NALACs, they're all run by ex-officers, or not many. I haven't seen any ex-councillors on there. And I would just think that this is just a repeating exercise. And like Councillor Oak said, they shouldn't have better things to get on with. And I think we're already are.
Well, let's get on with it now. I can understand that perhaps this is already inclined, but I can also observe that it is not put into practice. So to promote these values to councillors all over Dorset, whichever council they're on, I'm going to support this. I suggest we move to the vote.
Yeah, let's go to the vote then. All those in favour? Sorry, proposed by Councillor Worthing and Councillor Hamilton. Yeah. All those in favour?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All those against?
1.
No abstentions. Thank you very much. Item 12, seafront cleansing and waste provision. I'm going to ask Tony to introduce, but I would draw your attention, given the time, to not reviewing the current contract, because we already do it, but what the changes are to the new contract. Tony, would you like to say a few words? Thank you for staying around, by the way.
Thank you, Chairman. This report sets out the findings of the member review, seafront cleansing and waste and recycling collection. Broadly speaking, there are services which Dorset Council undertakes at no cost to the Town Council, particularly the year-round emptying of the 240 litre bins, the small blue bins that you see along the front. And there are also those services which may take place in the summer season that the Town Council needs to fund, and which are currently delegated to Dorset Council to undertake. These paid-for services include the emptying of a large 1,100 litre wheelie bins, emptying the recycling banks, the raking of the beach and disinfecting. The findings of the member review group as set out in Appendix I include the success of the 3 recycling banks, the misuse of a large greedy bins for the dumping of trade waste, and rubbish from all of the litter bins is treated and the way it's treated and repurposed by Dorset Council. In recent months, Dorset Council has recalculated the cost of the service it provides, and this has led to a significant increase in the price, as you can see in estimate A in Appendix J. To reduce the price of the service to an affordable level, the specification has been trimmed with less litter picking and the deployment of a large reader bins for fewer weeks. The cost of a reduced service is set out in estimate B in Appendix J. It is recommended, therefore, that officers develop an action plan to address the findings of the member review group, and that Dorset Council is commissioned to undertake the paid-for cleansing services for 23-24 in accordance with estimate B in Appendix J. If the revised specification is agreed, then officers can review its effectiveness in keeping the seafront clean in order that the specification for 2024 and its method of delivery can be agreed. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson, followed by Councillor Howard.
Can I just say that the massive amount of time spent by the members of this review group, I think it's come up with a good solution, good recommendation. I would like to propose a vote that we support this, because I think a lot of very good work's been done to get to this.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you very much. Just questioning to officers really, how come this ended up on finance and governance agenda? There's got a financial implication of the budget, but I thought it's a service.
Probably my fault, so don't.
Councillor Gray stealing my items again.
It was because of the impact that by the back contract, I wanted to make sure we didn't get everything we wanted, by the way. I wanted a more of a longer term contract, because all the indications in the marketplace are that this contract's going up and up and up. The cost of waste now collection is being driven because it's a very resource hungry service. This housing needs to take, so it's probably my fault. Probably my fault. So I'm happy to defer the services and you can take back.
Yeah, no, I'm to be honest, Councillor Gray, I'm quite happy. I know as Councillor Nicholson said, the involvement of members on this and the time this has been going on, and I'm actually pleased to see it come to the end with a recommendation forward. However, I would welcome a service review after 12 months to make sure there's been no impacts on the service and the cleanliness to the beach that we all pride ourselves on.
Yeah, I just know that this is the hardest working committee in this council. We're members of governance, we have income generation, we've got waste review, so just point that out. I'll go straight to Councillor Lambert, who wanted to say something about waste.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Hope. I would definitely agree with Councillor Nicholson. We've gone through this those of us who have been lucky enough to be on this group have learned an awful lot about waste that we certainly didn't know before. I would like to second Councillor Nicholson's proposal.
So you can see the proposals up on the screen now. Proposed by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Lambert. I don't really need to read them out. The cost goes to 267 from 230. So that money, by the way, is included in the budget proposal, because I got that before we started our deliberations. So again, trying to be a bit more efficient. All those in favour?
Do we have a proposal in second?
We did.
Yeah.
Councillor Nicholson,
B.
together, yes. Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Lambert. Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Thank you, members.
Chair, did you say that was for 1 year, or did you try and get them? No, they
What?
didn't have it.
Tony, would you like to comment? Because I sort of badgered you a little bit to try and get more of a way.
Yeah, we did propose to Dorset Council that it goes for longer. But they weren't keen. I think they see themselves as there's risks in there. They don't know what pay agreement will be next year and things like that. So they were reluctant to tie into just an RPI increase. But I think what we have got is a better base budget understanding of what the cost of the service is. I suspect we've probably been getting it not necessarily the full cost for some years, and now we've had sort of a bit of a reality check.
Yes, and we do need to be, Councillor Lambert's right, we've learned a lot about waste. I think there's some initiatives coming around trying to stop the street traders putting waste in our bins and all those sorts of things. We've got capital to spend on reducing that. So given that I think volume of waste in the future is going to be the driver, along with resource required, I think we do well to try and reduce that. Okay, I'm going to move straight to item 14. Not to be Shanghai, I've written here. That's the word you use, not to be Shanghai, but emergency repairs to Polytunnel. I'm going to hand over to the clerk.
Supposed to write everything I said then. As required by standing orders, when I use the delegated powers you have given me for emergency expenditure under financial regulation 4.5, I'm required to report that to you. In the past couple of weeks, we've had some significant damage to the Polytunnel because of the extreme weather we've been experiencing. Repairs are approximately £6,000. I authorised those repairs to be carried out before the item could be brought before you as members for a decision because of the significant risk to the service of not having the Polytunnel. The plants therein were at risk because they're not being protected from the elements, and to buy those back in or procure them from somewhere else would have been quite costly. The funding for the work can be taken from the Asset Dilapidations Reserve Nursery, where there is a balance of just short of £40,000. That element, as in the use of the reserve, requires approval from full council, and I'm asking the Finance and Governance Committee to recommend this. So looking at the recommendations, it's one, to note the use of the delegated powers, and secondly, to agree the recommendation of the release of reserves to the full council meeting in January.
Propose.
You second that.
Councillor Legg, seconded by Councillor Dickinson. I'm just going to come to Councillor Lambert first.
Yeah, I presume, given the recommendation, it would be inappropriate for me to challenge that this should have been done in the first place. It's no doubt being done.
What should have been done in the first place?
Repairing a polytunnel that we hope to dismantle within the next year or so.
We're still using, as of now, we're using that polytunnel. I understand that there may be plans to remove it within the next year, but we need that polytunnel now to protect the plants that are in there and for the growing season when we start bringing on our own plants again.
Thank you.
Not the answer you wanted, but it's an answer.
Can I just ask a question about that? Because the polytunnel we've got at the moment is twice the size of what we need, even with today's plans and ideas, let alone what we might go do for the future. Could we not have just shut down half of it?
I don't have the information to hand on what extent and whether that was an option.
Clearly not. We're going to come to the
There is another item on
which
polytunnel,
you can express views. So you've seen the recommendation, note the delegated powers, and agree the release of the funds to the release of reserves to full council. Proposed by Councillor Legg, seconded by Councillor Nicholson. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
All those against? And abstentions? 2.
Thank you.
Okay, item 15, Community Expo. I'm going to hand it to Jack Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall the inaugural Weymouth Community Expo that was held at Redlands Sports Hub last year in April. Extremely successful. We had over 30 charities and organisations who had stalls there. And whilst the footfall from the public probably wasn't at the level we would like, certainly there was a great deal of value in the stall holders networking. And they found it very, very useful. We did a survey of stall holders who felt it was a great event, as I said, great for networking, and that they would like it somewhere in future that had easy access, a greater capacity for parking for both traders and the public, as well as somewhere that was easy to walk to and where we could pick up on passing footfall. So Charlie, the council's events officer, has been looking ahead to next year, proposes the Expo takes place on the 25th of March. Just to remind members that the Expo acts as the annual town assembly, which has to be held in March or April each year. Two options are presented to you. Members have previously asked that we consider the ocean room at Weymouth Pavilion, but we also wanted to propose use of this building as well. So I'm happy to open it up to debate in the interest of speeding things along.
Any questions, Councillor Nicholson?
I think I'd like to propose option 2, because I think it allows the members of the public to come and see these council offices which they're paying for. It's a no cost to us in terms of rental. The car parking is not effective because it's the same whichever way we go. So, well, I'd like to propose option 2.
I'll come back to you.
This was discussed at TAG the other day. No councillor had put forward so it's going to be able to say so. But quite a few people at that meeting suggested we look to do it outside.
We did.
On
Councillor
the
Honey?
seafront.
Thank you very much, Councillor Huckle. No, I was just going to say I'd like to put an option 3 forward, which is it's an open air town assembly, utilising the town high streets. And we can use the town hall as a backup for wet weather. So we can relocate here if the weather is bad. And we look to have pop-up marquees with different information stalls around our partner agencies, similar to those of the Expo. The meeting part can be done in here like normal.
Are you sort of proposing it to be outside, within the where Devon's?
Yeah, no, all around where Devon's is, up and down St Mary's, St Thomas Street. There's plenty of locations that you can pitch a 3-metre gazebo and still need 3-metre access for emergency vehicles.
Would there be any problem with Dorset Council granting permission?
I don't want to stay on camera, but last time I applied, I couldn't find the right person to speak to.
We're not there anymore. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, the only thing is we haven't got an option 3.
No, we haven't, and I'll come back to you. So we've still got option B has been proposed by Councillor Nicholson, which we can I look, Councillor Wenner?
Just, sorry, I was going to make a recommendation that we look at both option, I'm sorry, just taking my glasses off.
Option B, which was
The town hall or open, or a combination of those two, and go forward on that in view of expediency, if we further explore those two, if councillor
happy to amend, either or.
I think so, but just based on the fact that it's March, I think the chances of
Yeah,
if it was June, I'd say yes, but I think
so. The wording would say to agree that members are to discuss the options and further way forward. Option A is the pavilion room, option B at the new town hall / outside venue if
we can look at a few
applicable.
gazebos close by, so if it is nice, we can use them.
So proposed option B is proposed by Councillor Nicholson.
In the agenda is option 2.
it's option 2.
Yes, so I keep saying B, it's option 2. Thank you, Councillor.
It
Option,
says B in the recommendation, so apologies.
yeah, that's where I was. Proposed by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Legg. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All those against? Any abstentions? Brilliant. Items 17, nursery relocation. Ben, you are patiently, diligently sat there. Wherever you feel comfortable. they should have read the paper, which again is substantive. I've given a slight bit of feedback around amendments should be in a different colour, so I can see what you've added.
My apologies.
You know, but go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper is to bring forward the, to consider the relocation of the council's nursery from Lynch Lane to Tumbledown as a site. The business case is quite long, so I think if you've read it all the way through, but it's basically to look at those options. The current Lynch Lane nursery is quite large and has two big open span growing areas that were relocated a number of years ago that are more than what we currently need for our business as usual. And the relocation would look to downsize that to a much more efficient and smaller, about a quarter of the size of the current nursery, to make it match our business as usual, but also make it more efficient and environmentally more friendly in terms of how we grow our own plants to service our own parks and gardens. There are pros and cons to both options, and there's throughout the paper it looks at a number of different options, but it basically ends up with two main sort of sides. One is that we relocate and downsize the nursery to be more efficient and grow on the Tumbledown site, which would alleviate the rental costs that we currently have, which is around about 18,000 with a 2.4% increase annually. But by downsizing to that, it would take out all our commercial growing elements, so we can't make income in the same way, or certainly not initially in the same way. But if we stay where we are at Lynch Lane, that space that we're not currently utilising for some of the commercial growing could be used to explore further commercial growing, if that's something that we want to use the currently redundant space for. The plants that we've grown have decreased in terms of our business as usual, and some of that makeup is commercial growing. And up to this current year, we'll be taking on a We Are Weymouth contract in baskets. That commercial growing wasn't profitable. The contract this year with the 2-year contract, so for this year and next, is profitable. So it depends on the type of commercial growing that we were potentially able to do with the redundant space as to whether that does make us more income or not. The other sort of element to it is that our current nursery rental agreement at Lynch Lane runs out on the 31st of March. I think it's the end of April 2024. So in terms of that relocation, if we were going to try and move and match it to that end of that current lease agreement, then we would need to get moving fairly quickly in the new year to make that possible. Or obviously we could relocate at a later date, but that would need a new lease agreement at Lynch Lane to give us that flexibility. If we were to stay at Lynch Lane, then we would need some capital investment, because the boiler is approximately 1 year, circa 1 year of life left in terms of the biomass boiler there currently, and the staff welfare water cabin is in quite poor condition, so at some point relatively recently that would also need investment replacement. This paper has obviously been put together with the CE group, and there's recommendations from the CE group in the paper, but it's to put it forward as a whole.
Thank you. It's a substantive paper, Ben, and great that you stuck with it. It's got lots of detailed information in there, so I'll take any questions. I'm hoping that you've all read the paper and you've got your options. I'm going to openly admit as the chair that this is something that I've modified my view on over the period that you've been writing this, given I was involved. So I have not changed my mind, but I have modified my view on this, and I'll explain that if we want. Councillor Nickinson first, followed by Councillor Harris.
The relocation costs, how is that? I mean, it's 195 to 236, and is that current costs? Is that, because the payback period is quite long on this 9 to 11 years payback, is quite a long time on a figure which I mean, you know, how accurate is that? So, you know, 9 to 11 payback, I'm not terribly happy
Ben, would you like to comment on the how accurate the figures?
Sure, yes, we put together those costs are currently live, so we've got sort of recommendations of costs back in from the various Polytunnel and groundworks and all those sorts of things. So currently they are fairly accurate, and that's why there's a sort of best and worst case scenario within that cost. But obviously, the longer we take, as inflation was raised earlier, those costs, will go up.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
And I think it would be important to mention that, of course, one of those costs we don't have any control over, and that's the rental that we're paying at the moment, and that's
Yeah, it's not likely to be 2.4% in my view, given inflation's running at 10. I think Mickey Jones will be.
But I'd just like to share with the group that the actual planning permission to do this is already in place. So we are allowed to do it, and we could get on with doing it if everybody.
Yes, that was a great victory in my view, because it's not an insubstantial mass that you're putting. Councillor Huckle.
Thank you. Not having been involved in the deep discussions that have gone on, thanks for that paper. My big concern is that we seem to be pretty busy in this council at the moment, and whether we can get this done within the year and a couple of months, I doubt very much. So I'd be more in favour of, yes, we go, but we ought to negotiate a small extension to our acquisition release. And sorry, also, I'm not quite sure where all the funding is coming from.
Yeah, okay, I'll come to that. Councillor Lambert?
Yes, thanks, Chair. You can blame me or praise me, because this was an idea that I came up with in December 2019. And I, for one, would be very peeved if this didn't happen as soon as possible. The costs have been laid out extremely well by Ben, who's done tremendous work on this since he arrived, and I commend him for it. Thank you, Ben. For me, it's a no-brainer, because as stated in, unfortunately, my computer just went on the blink. But I did notice that it does say that we're only currently using 50% of the space at Lynch Lane, hence my concerns about repairing the polytunnel there. And I thought that message might have got through. Mustn't dwell on that. The option 2 is to allocate 410 metres squared of growing space. Ben, that is half of the current space, isn't it?
So in terms of the polytunnel space, so at Lynch Lane, we've got about 800 square metres of greenhouse space and 800 square metres of polytunnel space. So that is about a quarter, just over, of the total growing space. And obviously we're looking to downsize our business as usual, and particularly annual plants growing, which is obviously where the heated and covered space is required.
But I think you made reference to the fact that it could go down further. We in the CEE working group have put this forward.
Yeah.
And could you comment on that? Because members should be aware that, of course, or it's pretty obvious, I guess, that the smaller the polytunnel, the lower the costs in making this take place. And whilst I accept what you say, Ben, which is that the commercial growing is finally going to be making a profit, I'm not sure what level of profit it is. Certainly the calculations that I've made in the past and have not been refuted suggest that we were selling plants at a loss. And this is something which initially got me concerned about this. So Ben, any comments about taking this down any further? Because there are in fact ecological advantages. I can't remember that I've banged on about it to you all before, by moving away from annuals to perennials.
Yeah, so obviously within the report there and within the paper that it says about there is some of the CE group that put that forward, so reducing it further down from the 400. The 400 doesn't have the commercial growing in it, so we've already taken it out to get it down to 400 anyway. So that's already been taken out. So the argument about making money or profit is sort of taken out by reducing it anyway. You could reduce it down further, but if you reduce it down further, then your annual planting wouldn't be enough to keep our show gardens in particular Green Hill and Sandsford, in the same condition, and that was one of the conversations that members had in those groups to look at keeping the reduction to a level that would still allow us to keep those show gardens in the same place and win our awards and things for that. So that's why we sort of settled on 400 being able to do that, but still reduce down capacity from the 800 we currently need at Lynch Lane.
Yes, thanks, Ben. So I noticed that Ben is saying there to maintain the same kind of condition. We need to move on in our thinking. Annuals was a great thing just for gardening in the past. It's not appropriate now. In just the same way that having beautifully cut lawns cut by motor mowers and having lots of pesticides on them is not appropriate anymore. We need to move forward, and if we did move forward on this, we could be taking a lead on this. And one of the disadvantages of annuals is that when you look at the annual beds in the winter, they're appalling. There's nothing going on, whereas there would be in perennials. And no chair you'd like to get on, so maybe I better shut up.
I'm really trying hard to let you have, to get to everything you want to say about it is fine. I have a couple of things, given I've been fairly close to this. I think I've modified my view, and I'll share that because we're allowed. I would vote for option B, but with an amendment. The reason that I would go to a more risk averse, not press the button in 2024, and bear in mind I was a supporter of this, and with Councillor Lambert all the way when he proposed it, is that the landscape, excuse the pun, has changed. The reasons that I take more risk averse is my firm belief now is parks and open spaces. So, sorry, my firm belief is that for Tumbledown to work, it needs to be at the centre of parks and open spaces. And what I mean by that is, it needs to be included. We don't talk about Tumbledown and open spaces and parks. It's just open spaces. We need to move our operations there. Councillor Lambert is absolutely right. We won't make it come alive until we move people there and services, and it's known as Weymouth Town Council's Tumbledown Centre of whatever. But Councillor Huckle's right. We're not in a position at the moment, given where we are with the review that we need on parks and open spaces. It's just too soon. My view, I'll just finish. My view is that it makes financial sense not to sign a 10-year contract at 20 grand and give somebody 200 grand. We'd much rather spend the money on building a first-class facility. The other thing I've been looking at is the sort of, rather than being April 24, start Tumbledown, this size of project needs a graduated transfer, in my view, what's called a graduated transfer, so that we build what we need to build. It will come at some additional cost. At least get the land ready before we start migrating over, because we run the risk of doing it badly, and it's a big project. So for me, personally, option B, but I wouldn't go for a 5-year extra. I would talk to the landowner and say, we're up to 2024, what's the chances of another couple of years? And then it gives us plenty of breathing space to say, in keeping our place for another couple of years, it allows you to get on with building what we need to build at Tumbledown. So that's sort of my modified view, and I've come to that by I think this is the 4th version I've written now. So that's sort of my fine. I'll take any other question.
Are you proposing that we seek a 2-year extension?
Yes.
To the lease?
Option B, but not 5 years. Just an extension of.
Well, that says midpoint. You're not talking about midpoint. You're talking about just a simple 2-year.
Take it to 2026. A, you're in the next council. B, you've got enough time.
No, I agree with you. Getting it clear what you're proposing.
I suggest it should be either 6 months or 18 months rather than 2 years, because we don't need it after May when all the plants have gone out of it. So we don't need to pay for another 2
whole
whole
shop officers to come up with it. 18 months would be fine with me, but I just think that we need to do some things at Tumbledown, in my view, so that's.
Yeah, I
my-
agree.
Yeah, councillor Home, we've got 5 minutes.
That's right, I wasn't going to talk on this, Chair, but just one point. By extending it by that period of time, will we have to then do the additional works that Ben alluded to earlier, such as the port cabin repairs and the other things to make that still a workable option? Or is the existing infrastructure still okay with the additional time on top?
Well, off the top of my head, if we've got loads of space in the Polytunnel, why can't we build a staff facilities in the Polytunnel and do away with the inappropriate one? I don't know. I've trust officers to come back with, you know, as their job. Ben knows, you know, what he's doing. Come back with a cost-effective option that gets us 2 years down the track. You know, you might have you might want to go for it. My advice is that it's too risky. Anybody else?
I mean, just,
Councillor
okay,
Nichols.
we're talking about 200,000 plus for the relocation. Where's that coming out of the 2024 budget?
I didn't want to go there. My view would be,
Where's it coming from?
my view would be that it would come from the reorganisation of parks and open spaces.
Hey.
I've done quite a bit of work on understanding how we can do that.
Well, I'm inclined to go with you. I think in days than we go.
But even with that, we could also use some reserve.
We could use some reserves, and Ian and I've got a bit of work to do on that in terms of vehicles. We're not clued up enough at the moment. Officers know this on what vehicles we need. We legacy wise, we've just done what we've always done. I can tell you from a capital register point of view, we're not making best use of our vehicles. So, you know, it's a big piece of work. It's a big piece of work. Yeah. Anyway, Councillor Weller, I'll shut up.
I'm not going to say anything now. I was going to, but I'm not going to, other than if that's your proposal, I'm very happy to second it. Could we go to a vote, please?
So just to be clear, I'm personally voting for option B, but rather than a 5-year, either an 18-month or a 2-year, up to a 2-year extension to the existing contract, that will allow us enough time to get further down the green track with Tumbledown. Yes, Catherine.
5 years with a midpoint break clause. What does that mean?
It means that both parties can agree at the half-year point. So
Has it got to be both parties?
It depends what you like. Depends on the lease. You can do both. I'd like us to come back and see whether what I propose is possible.
Yeah.
Is the first thing. If it's not, then you might have to face a different decision, which we can come back. Ben, you can do a fairly quick piece of work to say, would you allow us an extra 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, and the what was meant by the 5-year contract with 2-year break is pretty much what you're proposing, just taking out the 5-year bits, because we would hope to be in a position to enact the break clause.
Most importantly, how much is the extra 2 years? Okay, so that was my proposal. Everybody understands that. I'm proposing it, seconded by Councillor Nicholson. All those in favour?
1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All those against? 1.
1.
No abstentions. Thank you very much.
Instead of entertaining.
We've got 5 minutes before we need to take a vote, and I'm wondering whether we can get through. We've got some other stuff to do. So you want to take a vote on extending it by 15 minutes so that we can get through these things?
Now seems a natural break. So if we get into a discussion that's more than 5, we're going to have to break. And so I would say now if somebody could
Propose.
propose that we extend for 15 minutes, which will give you 20.
So seconded by Councillor Dickinson. All those in favour? 15 minutes extension beyond 10 o'clock.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All those against? 1.
1,
Any abstentions? 1, 2,
2, 3.
3. That is carried. Yeah. Okay.
That gives 10. Did somebody not vote? Did everybody vote in that last one? Can I just ask?
Yeah, somebody's left the room. Somebody left the room.
No, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
You
9,
used
10,
up our
11.
15 minutes, sure.
Come on, just come there.
Main scene information items. Information items, internal audit report, we've already talked about. Actions from previous meetings, unless there's anything on there. The only point I raised is we're still waiting for Dorset Council to look up the CCTV in March, and that's reflected in that. And the forward plan is as is, unless anybody got, it's just a members note the information items. Has anybody got anything substantive to say about those? Excellent. Item 19 is exclusion to the press and public, and for those viewing still online. This is where we talk about confidential items
And if you're still away.
that are of a sensitive nature. Everybody's still online. Can I have a proposal for that, please? Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Buckle. All those in favour, go into exclusion.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All those against? 1.
1.
All those abstaining? Councillor Weller?
Sorry, there should be.
You abstained.
Yeah, raise your hand.
Two abstentions.
Okay, that's carried.